It's been a week-long event, and we have whittled down 8 of the constructed teams to just the 2. Invictus Gaming from China and T1 from the rest of the world. We're going to be playing 3 best of 5s today, which we're going to call those sets for the ease of conversation. So we're going to play best of 3 sets. And it's going to be a good one, I think, Galen.
Yeah, I think that you can pretty much argue that these are the 2 best teams so far throughout this tournament. I think that from Team T1's perspective, Board Control has easily been the best player we've seen all tournament. Dominant performance with a 5-0 yesterday. But also on the Chinese side of things, XC is probably the best team in the tournament.
XC has had his double sweeps with Priest earlier in the week, but he did show signs of maybe a little bit of nerves or something in their semi-final when he just conceded a game for no particular reason that we could think of, saw a ghost and conceded. And apparently that is a thing that he has been known to do in the past. Not concede, but just like blank out and make mistakes. So although he's been doing fantastic with the Priest, if he has to play something else today, maybe he'll be under some pressure.
For sure. I think I got my words slipped up a little bit there. I did mean to say IG is the best team in the tournament. And the reason that I got it slipped up is because XC is going to be on Priest in this upcoming match. And we've seen XC on Priest go 6-0 over the first 2 matches to get into the semifinals. Yes, he struggled a little bit with Rogue, but his game plans overall have been fantastic. In the Rogue game, he understood everything that was going on before we did by a couple turns. And yes, in the late stages of the game, he got a little bit tilted because the Amazing Rio pulled the power of creation. But if that stuff doesn't happen, those really insane high rolls, I think he's really well positioned against T1.
Yeah, in that game, he was playing around a randomly generated togwaggle scheme that we could see, and he was still playing around it quicker than we had identified how to play around it.
Yes,
and he didn't know it was there.
Also, it was a mage. It wasn't a rogue generating the togwaggle scheme. It was a mage generating the togwaggle scheme.
Yeah, absolutely nutty. As to the rest of the team, Sif is a absolute beast in China, apparently up there with Lee these days, and works to the... He just works like Hunter Ace did at the time that Hunter Ace was winning absolutely everything, just constantly working, grinding, learning new stuff, trying things out. And Sword also has had a bit of a resurgence. He was a really good player back in 2015, 2016, took some years off. And both those 2 of these players were 5-0 in the APAC Masters Tour at one point. So plenty to go for. And also 2 of these players are in the Chinese playoffs. So we may get to see one of them in the World Championships.
For sure. With Sif specifically, I think I was only critical of 1 or 2 decisions that he made throughout the entire time that I've seen on broadcast. And I actually got a chance to re-look over those games later after the day ended. And I realized that what he did was actually just correct. And I had missed a very critical interaction due to risky skipper procking. I didn't understand it was procking. So, gameplay from Sif's perspective has also been really on point. But, they're going to have really fierce competition. Sure. Board Control is only 1 player on T1, but there's also Orange and Pheno.
Yeah, 2 of the best known and the best players in Europe in particular. And obviously Europe is basically the rest of the world if you're not Surrender. And so, or Galen, of course, but Galen doesn't count because he's going somewhere else. So, yeah, absolute powerhouse of a team. But Orange yesterday didn't seem to be on the ball at all. He made some very uncharacteristic mistakes. So hopefully he's got out the right side of bed today.
Yeah, specifically the right side of bed. I'm going to chalk that up to probably sleep deprivation. He was up 20 hours, grinding, trying to get a finish on North America and the European servers. Unfortunately, I hear that he did not qualify, so that must be a pretty big bummer. But at the same time, his team is in the finals of the Gold Club World Cup, so he really can't be too upset right now.
Yeah, and he got to do a bit of work as well. Ball Control won 5 games in a row yesterday. That's over the course of the 2 sets. Basically won the whole semi-final for them. And Orange asked Ball, don't forget to do the tweet. And Ball said, no, you've got to do something today. You've got to do the tweet. So Orange did at least get to make the celebration tweet yesterday.
Yeah, it's good to see that kind of jovial humor from teammates. I know that they're going into this very excited to get to play with one another. Orange specifically said, how pumped he was to actually be in the finals of a team tournament, not just specifically any tournament, but one where he can play with his friends. So it should be a really exciting matchup.
And Orange has good history in gold events before. He went to China last year or the year before. It's all merged into one. I think it was the year before, and played the Gold Open, which is at least 1,024 players. It might be 2,048. And he got to the final, like you do when you play in a tournament with four figures of players, and picked up a lot of money that time around. So he's done it all before in gold individual events. But as you say, playing a team event is a little bit different. And a true team event, not so much like China versus EU, is basically a solo event where one of the sides has a winning player. But this is an actual team championship.
For sure. I mean, even beyond that Gold Series Open, Orange has had a lot of success in China. I believe he won the Titan R Invitational in either 2018 or 2017. I can't remember off the top of my head. He's also had multiple WESG appearances with huge prize pools, so wouldn't surprise me to see him nab up another win here.
Yeah, he came second to Staz in the first WESG in that final, and that was another occasion where they flew out there. And he's massively popular in China as well. I remember one of the makeup people was pointing to the screen saying, like, this player's from China, but this is the person I want to win. And the person they wanted to win was, of course, Orange. So he has got a lot of support over there, but maybe not so much today, because this IG team, who did place first in what we call the Chinese Team League, which is the Gold Team Championship, they are going very well, and I think they're becoming very popular on the back of it.
Yep, that doesn't surprise me at all. I think they've had a lot of very strong plays and just very good understandings of every single matchup. We're taking a look at picks and bans here, and they're pretty similar. The only difference is one team will have access to Rogue, one team will have access to Demon Hunter. But beyond that, we've kind of seen the same ban strategies from the last couple teams that we've seen on broadcast. At the beginning of this tournament, we saw a little bit of wacky stuff, people leaving up Warrior, people leaving up Hunter, which I don't really think are good strategies. The two that really make the most sense to me are banning Warrior, banning Hunter, banning Warlock, and then leaving up Rogue or Demon Hunter. And that's the two strategies that T1 and IG are on. But beyond that, we've seen a pretty similar range of decks available to both teams. Shaman, Paladin, Druid, Priest, Mage, and then one of the two choices remaining. And it leads to a lot of very long games. A lot of the aggression in this format has been kind of canceled out. Warrior and Hunter are both banned. They're very aggressive decks. And from the remaining two, Demon Hunter a lot of times is just Control Demon Hunter, which is much slower of a deck to end up.
It really is. We have seen some of the Shamans come to life and the very occasional Paladin, but definitely not with overwhelming success. And even in the matchups they're supposed to win, we've seen the Shamans lose multiple times with, like, the ladder stats say 78%, but actually good players find ways to cut little bits off that 78%, as we saw with Boar Control yesterday playing against the Shaman with Druid.
Yeah, and I mean, with that specific matchup, Boar Control won with Druid against Murloc Paladin and Evolve Shaman. And Murloc Paladin is an 80% favorite versus Druid based off of ladder stats, and Shaman is a 75% favorite against Druid against ladder stats. So it's either Boar got ridiculously lucky, which I don't think is really the case. He did get a little bit of favorite outcomes, or fortunate outcomes, excuse me, but I think it's also because ladder stats don't always resemble top players' play.
No, definitely not. I don't know what stats they're using, but let's assume they're using legend stats. Well, I know there were 100,000 legends in China in April. And so if you're taking the 100,000th best player's stats, whoever the 100,000th best player is in any region, they're probably not good enough to contribute stats to the players who are in this particular tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really easy to tell that. Boar was doing a lot of next level plays, I have to say. And, it was things that even I wasn't spotting. So there's a lot of skill involved, and the overarching win rate from tons and tons of players doesn't indicate at the highest level what the actual stats are.
Just looking at this pickup here from XC, he's managed to get an Edwin with a coin and a 1-drop in his hand as Priest. This could actually be a problem for Orange.
Yeah, that's pretty darn good. Good news for Orange is that if he finds a secret, that Blackjack Thunder will deal with it, but he does not actually have a secret in hand right now. He had to use the first Dirty Tricks as just a tempo play, get it on board. So if he doesn't find a secret here, he could be in massive trouble.
He has to seal fate his own face as well. Obviously, he has to here. I think it's the only sensible-looking play, but I always hate seeing that. It's just such a grim play to have to make. And I'm still not in favour of pinging own phase with Mage, nearly always. Let's see if XC just goes for it now. I don't see why he wouldn't, but maybe he'll find something else.
Madame Lazul is decently interesting because you have a very good shot at finding a lackey or a playable minion or a playable spell and Praise Galakond. And if you wait for next turn, you can go lackey plus the Renew plus the Edwin Van Cleef, whereas this turn all you're doing is making a 6/6.
I think I'd like to keep Lazul though until nearly at the Rogue's Galakond turn and try and snipe a Galakond.
That's very fair.
We are just going to see the 6/6 Edwin, and Orange is just not going to be a happy bunny at all with this. But consummate professional that he is, just notes it down and carries on playing. No reaction there, which is good to see. And of course, even though that Flick will deal with the Edwin if it gets that far down the line, it will deal with his own Edwin as well, which is a big deal. Oh, XC's just stealing all the good cards.
Flick Skyshiv is a big player in this matchup. As long as this isn't Mana Wraith, Orange is going to be fine. Oh, wait a second. That's huge. He can just dagger and go Blackjack Stunner and deal with the Edwin. That's insane.
Yep.
That's like literally the best one he could have possibly gotten. That's nuts. What
and
the
he
heck?
just hovered over it to read it because
Orange.
He wants to just, yeah.
Oh my lord. That's
Yeah, he's
so
just double and
stupid.
triple checking he knows the interaction. Like, he read it. So whenever you see that... Whenever you see that, you just have to check. Does it say Hunter Secret? Or is it definitely okay? Because you never actually read the card because you know what it does. And that is just so amazing. And he's got a monstrous board now as well. It might not look very big, but if you keep threatening Priest with these small and irritating boards, eventually the Priest will fold up.
That's so dumb. I feel so bad for XC because he had the brief moment of joy and hope where he had the Edwin stolen with Thoughtsteal and he was on the coin. Suddenly Orange just goes, let's get this face slack, you get a face stalker out. Yep, GG.
And I mean, you think it's that important, right? You think that is GG. It does look pretty good, it's got to be said.
Do you have info on the secret that was pulled out? There is an indicator, but it's just too small for me to read. Did you catch it, whether it was ambush or dirty tricks?
If you give me a second, I'll work it out.
It's dirty tricks. He just played a Madame Lazul, excuse me. So we know for sure that it is
okay.
draw 2.
There you go.
Yeah.
I do like the indicators. Like you say, it is a bit tiny on the screens we're using, but it's very helpful. I like the Galakond indicators as well.
Yeah, it's very nice. If Orange wanted to, he could re-dagger this turn to get that extra secret out, but I do think just developing a 4/5 here, advancing the game plan of Galakond is just much more impactful.
It's important for Orange to keep the board clear most of the time, right? Just to play around Apotheosis to some degree. You want that damage to stick.
I think Ferrocat should trade here. Having Lackey in play for Heistbear and Togwaggle is a great idea. And if a Shadow Step comes out, you'd much rather Shadow Step the Blackjack Stunner than Shadow Step a Ferrocat. Blackjack Stunner is just tempo, not value, and right now all Orange needs is tempo.
Yeah, he agreed with that plan. I agree with that plan too. The V-Dagger obviously tempting, but he'll get there. Let's do the Togwaggle thing first and worry about Hanar as a backup plan, because it's far less impactful than just Togwaggle. XC is still on 25 health and does still have plenty of cards in hand, so there's at least some fight and struggle still to come from his side. Will he be thinking about the Soul Mirror already?
Really hard for XC once that Face Stalker came out. It's just hard to understand how important that 2-drop was for Orange here.
Oh yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, that Edwin was going to make Orange's life an absolute misery.
The Face Stalker was worth 5 times this. It's worth 5 times what a Millhouse would have been worth on this board state. That's how good it was.
That's a lot.
Now that being said, if the Face Slacky did pull 4 or 5 Millhouses, I think that would have been pretty acceptable as well. But
Right, going into turn 6 is kind of the safest turn for Orange to really go for it. Soul Mirror's a whole turn away, so he can really choose to either... I think he can just go wide here with his questing, put a lot of pressure on.
I like that. You could even choose to re-dagger if you so choose, to get the ambush in play.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of tricky things you can do with Shadow Step. You could even Shadow Step your own Phase Stalker to try and guarantee that ambush for later turns. Not saying that is the right play, just saying
No.
there's a wealth of options for Orange available right now.
It's actually making it really difficult for Orange, because if you just play this turn with any sensible combination of Hearthstone maneuvers, you will be in a really good position. Finding the best ones is really difficult because there's so many options.
Yeah. From Orange's perspective, I think getting the Questing Adventure to about 4 health and not above that, or 4 attack and not above that, is a really good idea. Going to 5 might just be a little bit too much.
You're just limiting it so that Time Rip is the only way to deal with it, yeah?
Right. I like the re-dagger. I'm impressed with how Orange did this turn. He has the Lackey in hand for the Togwaggle next turn. I think he's just done his game plan any number of which ways, and they're all correct.
Yeah, and also next turn he's going to be able to play around Soul Mirror if this doesn't get Time Ripped, which it's going to, because he would be able to buff it well out of range of Soul Mirrors and give XC yet another problem. So even though it did get dealt with, it was still setting up to have a turn that would just win the game. And Orange just is so much more on it today than he was yesterday.
Everything so far has looked immaculate from Orange's perspective. That being said, he got really darn lucky.
Well, yeah, but we'll forget the lucky bit, like just setting things to exactly 4 attack. All the straightforward but things that you eventually mess one up, clean things. It's just looking very tidy. I'm not saying that's why he's winning. I'm just saying that, yesterday he looked very out of sorts by what we're used to for seeing Orange, and today absolutely spotless. Do you find that? Do you find that you have some days where you wake up and nothing makes sense, and other days it's just easy?
Yeah. It's really hard to notice at the time when that happens. Most recent tournament, for example, Masters Tour Asia Pacific, ended up being at about 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. my time, and that was not a time zone that really ever works for me. And during the matches, I would say, oh man, I'm just getting super high rolled right now. But I was actually just really tired, and re-looking at them, I definitely made some mistakes and probably could have won one or two games that I ended up losing. So yeah, I mean, it definitely does happen.
I think even at my level, there's days where, if you looked at the first 20 games I play on a day and take the average win, and then you look at the next 20 and take the average win, I'd swear that I played all 40 the same, but the first 20 have a much higher win percentage.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Fatigue is a very real thing. One of the biggest advice, or one of the most important pieces of advice you can give to someone that is going to their first Hearthstone tournament is to drink water, eat food, and if you can, get a small nap in between games.
Yeah, everybody is always amazed how, it's just 6 rounds of Hearthstone. Okay, good luck with your 10 hours. Don't forget, it's just 6 rounds of Hearthstone, but it's also hours of waiting around till Jala finishes his match and other such things you have to deal with.
Right, and I mean, it's a pretty stressful, it can be very stressful at events. You have to win pretty much every single game to make it to the next stage of the tournament. So, there's just a lot of pressure to do well.
Back in this, it looks like Orange is right on the edge of getting it done. He will still be worried about any fight back from the Priest, but as long as he can keep presenting this sort of size board turn after turn, he should be in an okay spot.
I definitely agree with that. The ambush gets picked up, which is both a good and bad thing. Bad because the Phase Stalker will no longer pull it with a hero power, but it is the final secret in Orange's deck, and that means Shadow Jeweler Hanar can actually pop off.
Can't believe how long it's hung around on the board for. That's the pressure that XC's been under. This Phase Stalker's been there since like turn 3 or whatever it was, or 4.
Eye for an Eye is probably the pickup. It doesn't really do anything, but the other secrets also don't really do anything. So pick the one that's the cheapest.
And something you've been saying all week, that damage when your opponent's under 10 health is quite relevant. So Even eye for an eye for 2. It's not so relevant against Priest, but get a little bit of damage in there later on. It might come up being relevant. Because I do think that people sometimes fall into the trap of over-picking Paladin secrets with Hanar rather than just picking a good secret. That not there, but in general, I think people do pick the re-roll that is the Paladin secret a little bit too often.
Yep. I mean, if you have 2 mana left, Paladin secret is the same as a Hunter secret. You pick the Paladin secret, you have 1 mana remaining, but you can't pick a Paladin secret anymore. Shadow Jewel Hanar will give you secrets from another class of the one that you just played. So if you play a Paladin secret, you will be offered Rogue, Hunter, and Mage. Exactly.
To be absolutely fair, XC looks a bit more on it today as well. He's just not really had the situations to do anything about it.
Yeah.
But if this is laying the foundation for how this final is going to go, this is fantastic to see. We might sit to 15 Hearthstone games today.
Yeah, it's a very reactive hand. The good news is that Ambush was played, so the Shadow Madness can steal the 2/3 if necessary. He also gets to deal with this Never Surrender pretty efficiently, I have to say. But he's only at 9 life. Renew gets picked up. That's huge. I believe Orange would be interested in playing this counterspell in the Xerox Crown at the same turn.
How come? What would... Just to protect whatever he gets?
Xerox Crown and counterspell work really well together. It protects around the Soul Mirror from the deck. XC would have to have another spell to use alongside that. And if you pick a Xerox Crown with... high health and low attack, like Ysera, you're in a really good spot. Yeah. Ysera, of course. That's the one.
Wise Man once said something about 4 attack, high health minions against Priest, right?
Right. Repentance, Sturdy Tricks, Freezing Trap. Does Repentance really do anything? Do the others 2 really do anything? I think the answer is no in both cases, so just pick the cheapest one.
Yeah, Bamboozle might even come into play here.
Bamboozle's really interesting because against a Soul Mirror, the 2/1 will attack first. Okay, well the Bamboozle isn't coming into play. But what would happen is the opponent's 2/1 would attack into Orange's 2/1, and then it would get Bamboozled because it's on any attack, not just direct combat attack.
It's 1 Awakens, isn't it?
Yup. He has lethal
So if you know
setup.
that one of them is the Awakens, what's the odds of getting 2 Awakens is the big question. But yeah, anyway.
I believe it's 1 in 25, 4%.
But if you know one's an Awakens. Anyway.
Okay.
I'm not going to start everybody on that line of reasoning again. I know what disasters can befall people. But it looks like it's just over here for XC, whatever those were. Can't even deal with the stuff in front of him, let alone the pickups. And gives it up, and XC... He looks pretty distraught, but really it just wasn't really his fault. He looked like Edwin was going to get rolling. He can't blame himself for that. Just a game of Hearthstone that he didn't win. Orange played really well, and you're not going to beat Orange, who gets a little bit of luck and plays his best. It's just not happening.
A little bit is underselling how impactful that Phase Stalker was. There's really nothing else to say for XC's perspective. The game did not like him in that one. Phase Stalker pulling out a secret, giving Orange access to a 1-mana Blackjack Stunner to deal with the 6/6 for free and keep developing on the board. Yeesh, that was really good for Orange's hopes of winning that one.
And Orange has got Rogue up. Rogue has been banned a lot this week. We saw Orange get his all-kill, his 3-0 win with Rogue on day 1 or 2 earlier in the week, the first day he played. And IG are now, it is last hero, but they're tasked with finding one of their decks that they think beats Rogue.
I mean, I don't think that's going to be super difficult to find one with a favorable matchup. The problem is that against Rogue, there really are no hard counters. I think the best deck against Rogue is going to be a Spell Druid or a Dragon Spell Druid, but even that is getting a little bit checked. Rogue is now including Questing Adventurers, which is a card that Orange runs 2 copies of in his deck. And I mean, Priest was a matchup that is supposedly very decent versus Rogue. So, they are running out of choices here. I don't really like Shaman. I hate Paladin. But, if you're a Mage fan, I could see Mage also coming into play. I know that a lot of Mage players thinks that the matchup is favored for Mage. I would have to disagree with that. But again, it's really going to come down to skill. I think the better player wins in a lot of these cases.
Mage players and rogue players throughout all of Hearthstone's history have always been unmovable that their deck is favoured against everything. Rogue players in particular, which you are now classified as having made that comment. But mage players too, they just won't have it that their deck can be beaten. It's always been the same.
Yeah. It's hard to say though. Mage games are mage games. They aren't really like normal Hearthstone games. A lot of stuff happens, and you can't really account for it. Lots of spells are played from outside the deck that are just random spells that do lots of crazy stuff. And every game is going to be different. It is going to come down to who can analyze these different situations better and quicker. And I think that Sif is a very intelligent person. Are they playing Mage here? I did not get a chance to see the decks being queued up.
It's on the next screen. We haven't seen it yet.
All right, so it is going to be Tempo Demon Hunter, which makes a lot of sense, actually. This matchup got a lot worse for Tempo Demon Hunter. Warglaze Azzinoth was the best card in the deck versus Rogue, in my opinion, and that card got massively nerfed. That being said, it still has a lot of gas against Secret Rogue. Lots of early game minions. Backstab can't answer everything, and Beaming Sidekick protects really well against it. And they just have a lot of aggression in the early game where, if Rogue draws a clunky hand with 4/5s with Taunt or with Galakrond, they can just get run over.
Going to be really fun to watch Sif play this because Tempo Demon Hunter, especially against Rogue, does have a lot of decisions. People may not think that. In fact, I'm sure that people chatting now will be saying, what's this caster on about? What an idiot. But Demon Hunter has a lot of tough choices to make. I want to see Sif make them. Sif really is the player that I'd like to hype the most in this entire tournament as well. I think we're expecting him to get to the World Championships, although obviously in Hearthstone it doesn't always work out that way. His name on the Chinese server is Yi Lun, which translates to 1 round. That's like calling Hunter Ace 0-2 drop. His name is 1 round, and that's the way the Chinese sort of equate to, the player lost in the first round and gave up. So he's got a bit of a meme nickname on the Chinese server.
Orange had actually changed his name for a bit on the North American server. He was going as Downbeat, which in some respects is kind of the same, But I imagine Orange is pretty upbeat right now, so.
I imagine so, and it's always a relief when you do have a bad day to come back and play well the next day, and you're playing well. You don't need to do anything else other than have that confidence that everything's back in shape and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that yesterday was a pretty uncharacteristic performance from Orange, and based off the gameplay we've seen so far today, I think it's been cut off. All the bad stuff has been removed. Thankfully.
Absolutely. And seeing Boar played how Boar Control played yesterday, I mean, Fino played well, but he didn't have much to do. But Boar, I think, raised the whole team's morale just by playing some superb games of Hearthstone. Yes, he got a bit of luck, but you tend to see how well people play when they play to some outs and hit them. You tend not to take it in so well, especially as a viewer. If somebody plays to an out and the out doesn't come, you go, okay, well, it didn't come. But Boar hit a couple of outs that he played for as only ways out yesterday, and it looked superb to watch.
I definitely agree with that. I really like this play from Orange as well, just developing a 1-2. A Backstab now will check any Amani Berserker or Bone Trooper Brawler that comes out. From Sif's perspective, though, I imagine he still goes for a 2-3 here. It would be really dumb not to. It'd be really dumb not to. I don't even know why I even mentioned it.
But which one?
That is the question, right? I think that Amani Berserker makes a bit more sense. Bone Trooper Brawler gets better with more health, while Amani Berserker always remains at 5 attack.
And also one has Taunt. Maybe that'll be relevant later on. This first minion. If Orange isn't dealing with the first minion, he might as well give up Hearthstone now, right? If you can't deal with this as Rogue. So the first one's getting dealt with, so why not throw out the one that has slightly lesser abilities?
Yeah. And I mean, normally when you have a taunt in play, you can chip away at it, but chipping away at a Bone Trooper Brawler is generally a really bad idea. That can stop a lot of damage from the Rogue's perspective, just because, when you deal 1 or 2 damage to a Bone True Brawler, it's not a 2-3, it's a 6-3. And 6-3 hits you in the face for 6.
Yeah, and then you have 6 less health.
Right.
Which is a lot less than you started with.
It's 20% of your life total in one swing.
That being said, I think Sif is going to struggle a little bit here. If you haven't damaged Rogue or got the board off them early, and this is where the Blackjack Stunner is going to help Orange, the Rogue can just go wide and start just cutting off the Demon Hunter. The old thing about Rogue doesn't heal is important, but if they're not taking damage, then it doesn't matter. So this is the big deal. This is the fight that is going to be this particular game. All about this 2-5 now.
A secret pickup here would have been huge for Orange. He would have been able to go Prep, Evil Miscreant, Secret, Shadow Step, Blackjack Stunner the 2-5, but he did not find a secret. So, that being said, if he finds an Ethereal Lackey here and the Ethereal Lackey generates a secret, he's in a really good spot. Okay, none of that stuff happened. Ignore everything I said.
Cool. You have been ignored. Well, just evolve the 1-4 into something good.
I like that play a lot.
Just win, lol.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's what he did last time with random Lackey generation, so...
Plenty of good 4-drops, though. Like, you'd be unlucky not to get something that has 3 or 4 attack to challenge in here.
Orange, I think, should still be interested in playing for tempo. Maybe a Shadow Step on the Witchy Lackey to Shadow Step the Maiev and make it a... Or Shadow Step the Witchy Lackey, evolve the Maiev and make it a 5-drop. Might just still be the way to win.
Yep. Shadow Stepping the Maiev is too slow and cumbersome. He's actually getting rid of the Stunner here.
Okay, so he's going for the pretty low odds that he gets a secret, but, that makes a lot of sense. If he does find a secret, he has access to a lot more, I would say.
Just getting rid of this 2-7 would put him in a good spot, but Sif not messing around. Orange not dealing with the minion, telling Sif that he can go about his business, and has generated a bit of a monster of a board now for Orange to worry about.
Has to find something good here. These are not good minions. Alright, praise Galakrond. Get an Ethereal Lackey, get a secret, prep the secret, and then Blackjack Stunner the 4-3. I think that's Orange's way to win this game. And you can see why Sif going Amani Berserker first instead of the Bone Trooper Brawler first has been really impactful so far. The taunt actually ended up mattering quite a bit. And yeah, I think it's going to single-handedly solo this game.
Yeah, it's just those little decisions. Like, it doesn't really matter almost ever which one he threw out there. They usually both die. But on this particular occasion, it did matter, and he picked the right one. I think a lot of people would have made the right decision for the reasons that I gave, but even so, constantly making those good decisions leads to winning Hearthstone.
Bone True Brawler is also a pretty interesting minion to me, because I think that it was kind of just discounted when it was first released. People just thought it was an unplayable card. But then when you read the card, it's got 1 more health than a Frostwolf Grunt, and it also just becomes an insanely large minion if you buff it and take some damage. And the more people play with it, it's like, oh, this is actually just a crazily strong tempo minion.
I think a lot of the old school players, which includes you and me, still instinctively think that 2-3s and 3-2s and small things just get traded off and removed without... You don't, work it out. You just... The back of your mind is like, yeah, it's a 2-3. The ability doesn't matter because it's going to get blown up. I think it's very easy to discount those unless you spend your time reading through them carefully. Which is obviously now your job, so that's fine.
It just has a lot of stuff on it.
Yeah, and you're supposed to have sort of turned the tide by now as Rogue. Normally you get to this spot and it's like, well, if they've got a skull, that's the Demon Hunter's last push. But Sif's in such a spot, he's not even playing the skull. He's busy doing other things and limiting Orange's options with a mana burn. If Orange couldn't do anything with 5 mana last turn, he won't be able to do much with 4 mana this turn, is the theory.
Orange is dead. Orange is really dead. Sif has so many ways of clearing this. He can clear it with just his hero. Develop another 2-3 behind it, and also push damage 5, 8, 11. Put orange at 7, and orange has 4 mana to work with. I don't see a world where orange could possibly win this game.
No, I mean, Demon Hunter hasn't even started doing Demon Hunter things yet.
Sif has a Skull of Gul'dan in hand right now.
Exactly. Absolute beating. We haven't seen much Demon Hunter.
After this game, he's going to have the Skull of Valera too. I wonder what that card would possibly do.
Don't know. That's your job to decide, not mine. Yeah, I'm going to keep just going down that line forever now. Just setting up the Blame Gallon hashtag. Cora's had it for a few months. It's your turn. But yeah, not much more to say about this one. That is just going to be over next turn. And now you see why we haven't seen much Demon Hunter. But it's been, apart from the control one, because there's 4 bans and basically 5 decks you want to ban. And so the Demon Hunter occasionally sneaks through, but this is why it doesn't sneak through very often.
Yeah. Looking at that game and just my general own thought process on Demon Hunter, I do think submitting Control Demon Hunter to this tournament was a pretty large mistake. The games with Control Demon Hunter have looked... The deck just looks really bad, not going to lie. Especially in this kind of format. You're never really queuing it into your favorable matchups because they're always getting banned. So I do think that the Tempo Demon Hunter was probably the correct submission. One thing to keep in mind is that T1 actually still has they have a Control Demon Hunter in the lineup and not a Tempo Demon Hunter, which I think is a pretty big error in terms of deck list. It's the only one that I can really see and spot. But yeah, that aggressive game plan I think is really strong to have right now in this field.
Yeah, I think what tricked teams into not bringing it is, you're going to be left with weaker classes. It's not straight up ban 4. There is a convoluted process of banning and picking and stuff. Well, banning and more banning. There's no picking. But I think teams relied on their Shaman to do the job of the Tempo Demon Hunter because you'd be up against slightly weaker decks than normal. And they figured that an aggro Shaman, whether it's the Galacrond or whether it's the Totems, they felt would be an adequate replacement. But we've just seen there how good Demon Hunter is, and we've spent all week saying, yeah, Shaman might win this, but it's then going to get countered even if it wins, and then it loses anyway, and it's like, oh, what a load of rubbish.
I mean, if you really thought that Totem Shaman could do the job of Tempo Demon Hunter, then the phrase that you'd be saying is, could Tempo Demon Hunter do the job of Totem Shaman? And that one sounds really silly. So,
okay.
yeah, it cannot. Okay, Totem Shaman and Tempo Demon Hunter are 2 very different classes. Totem Shaman is one where they're just praying that you have no answer to their 0/2 totem. Meanwhile, Tempo Demon Hunter is loading up with a 2/7 with taunt that's going to become a 7/7 or an 8/7 later in the game, which is what we saw in this last game. So one of them is definitely better than the other, I think.
Yeah, it's all about sort of, do you think, as it happens, T1 did get their Demon Hunter banned this time around, weirdly enough, but it is all about, do you think my Shaman won't be banned if the Demon Hunter's going to get banned anyway? But then, I don't know, I'm with you, I want to force them to ban it. Here's a deck you've got to ban, now you have fewer options.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, Rogue is one of the stronger classes in this format, and if you make teams ban your Demon Hunter, then your Rogue is going to be up, and I like it when your Secret or Stealth Rogue is going to be up for the tournament because it's just the strongest deck in the field when you can ban Warrior, ban Hunter, and ban Demon Hunter of your own.
Yeah, very much so. We've seen not much Rogue getting through because of those reasons. And when it has got through, it's done pretty well. Okay, it went 1-1 here, but Orange swept with it earlier in the week. And everybody else has pretty much banned it. I can't remember casting much Rogue at all, and trust me, I remember when I cast Rogue because Rogue is like my Achilles heel, so I always wince when it comes up.
For sure. I think the choice is generally between Warlock and Rogue. Those are the 2 switcheroos in terms of bans. I do respect a Quest Warlock ban. Quest Warlock has really good matchups against stuff like Priest, and it also has a lot of removal tools to deal with, Totem Shaman, Murloc Paladin, for example. But yeah, Rogue is just a stronger deck to me. And I do agree with that ban. I don't fault people for banning Warlock, but in this ban phase, I think banning the 4 strongest classes makes a lot of sense. And the 4 strongest classes to me are obviously Rogue, Demon Hunter, Warlock, or Warrior and Hunter.
So with that in mind, with the Demon Hunter now up and running riot across the board, T1 have got to find something to challenge it with. And remember, they haven't got a real Druid deck either.
Taking a look at what has been banned, IG has banned Warlock, and Warlock is generally known to be the strongest queue into Demon Hunter. Generally, well, Warrior is probably the strongest, but Warrior is just always getting banned. Warlock has a lot of really good tools to play defense for the early game and mid game. Moarg, Nether Breath just solos the matchup sometimes. They have a ton. Sometimes they run Acidic Swamp Ooze as a tech card to just deal with Warglaives of Azzinoth. And they just have a bunch of ways of dealing with early minions. Dark Skies, Moarg, Rain of Fire, Mortal Coils, etc. But the Warlock is banned, so that is not really an option. However, Mage is still up, and I know that a lot of players are saying Mage is pretty favored into the current iteration of Demon Hunter. Warglaives of Azzinoth getting nerfed, again, really impacted that matchup. And Mage has a lot of tools to fight back. They have Kartut Defenders, Ice Barriers, Zephyrus, Acidic Swamp Oozes. So wouldn't be surprised to see
I don't like
Mage.
that discussion, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm on the side of... Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just going to chip in there, because I think that Demon Hunter still beats Mage. I've heard this argument from you all week, and we've seen Mage do well all week. I still have not been convinced that Demon Hunter doesn't just smash it off the board.
Don't shoot the messenger. I agree with you. It's the players that are saying this, not me. I still really like Demon Hunter's shot in that matchup. I would still give it the slight edge. It used to be massively favored in my mind, but now it's probably 52, 53% in that matchup. However, I'm not the one playing right now. They are, so it's their decision. And if they decide to go with Mage, it makes a lot of sense based off their thought process.
I mean, we had players yesterday saying that Mage beats Warrior. I mean, that didn't end too well for them, but they gave it a good go.
Yeah, that one's way too silly to ever agree with. I do think the Mage versus Demon Hunter matchup is a lot more arguable. Yeah, but stats also say that Board Control should never win a single game in his life when he's playing Druid. However, he went 5-0 with it, so the stats don't always say the full story.
This is very, very true. Fino is coming out, and there's a good chance that means we're going to see some boxers, Galen. You might well have called this.
See, boxes? Is one not enough for you, Lorinda?
I want to see as many boxes as possible when Fino plays them, because he makes me smile when he plays them. He is actually on the Priest, and they're saving Board Control till last. 50-50, apparently. I'm surprised.
Hot take for you, Lorinda. Box should be able to cast Puzzle Box.
I mean, if you're going to make crazy cards happen, they might as well be crazy, right?
Right. They are actually queuing up Priest into this. One thing to note is they're playing the anti-aggro Priest, and this is something that we haven't really talked much about because this matchup just doesn't come up often in this tournament. The innovations in Priest actually have done a lot for this matchup. Along with the nerfs to Warglaives of Azzinoth, again, hugely impactful in this matchup, got nerfed severely. The addition of cards like Imprisoned Vile Fiend, Grave Runes, Apotheosis in this matchup mean that Priest actually has a fighting chance in the early game. I was talking with some Priest experts, No Hands Gamer, a couple others, and they said something along the lines of, if you have Imprisoned Vile Fiend in the opener, your matchup against Tempo Demon Hunter is about 80-20 for the Priest. And if you don't, then it's 20-80 in the opposite direction. Fino has the Imprisoned Vile Fiend in hand right now. It's just a 2-mana 3/5 with Rush, and he has follow-up with both Breath of the Infinite and Mind Flayer cards. This is a really good hand for Fino. Not only that, he's also on the play, which is crazy.
Yeah, he is in a very good spot. And I agree with you about the Imprisoned Vile Fiend. It's so irritating to play against because Demon Hunter will go wide, it will do some damage, but if that's picking off one minion a turn, the Demon Hunter will soon run out of cards, and Skull, good though it is only really good as a second push. If your first push hasn't done anything, then the Skull is nowhere near as powerful as if you've already done 18 points of damage or something, obviously.
Yep, it's really hard in this matchup to mulligan optimally because you do need the late game value as the Demon Hunter with Skull of Gul'dan, but you also need the early game pressure, like you're saying, and you need to find a good balance there. If you don't find a balance, you overload too much on the one-drops, and you can just gas out if you don't find a Skull of Gul'dan. And if you load up on the value, then you just don't have enough chip damage in the early game to get the job done in the late game.
Absolutely pivotal game here in this first set. Just a reminder, I'm going to keep reminding people, we've got new people coming in all the time. We are playing the best of 3 sets, and each set is the best of 5. So we could be here for a long, long time today. And seeing strategies in this match might actually change in the next one as well. So mind games not just within the match, but within the whole day of Hearthstone that's coming up.
Do you want to point out that Fino picked up Apotheosis? Apotheosis combos with Imprisoned Vile Fiend much better than the usual minion because it's not interactable. There's no way to deal with dormant minions when they're in a dormant state. And Imprisoned Vile Fiend also has Rush, so you can just get that immediate value with the Apotheosis. So it's kind of like doubly protected on an Imprisoned Vile Fiend. Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'd like to make a request actually now. If you can make us some way to interact with dormant minions, that would be great. See you in a couple of years. Thank you. But nice, easy, clear here for Fino should he want to take it. Or he can go for some pretty greedy option here and just develop Mind Flayer and try and fight back on board because he's going to have the... He's going to be ahead and force Sif to do something next turn if he goes that route.
Something to keep in mind is that Fino, if he plays the Breath of Dreams, then Sif is much less likely to play, a large minion to attack into. For the Imprisoned Vile Fiend to just run over, and that Mind Flayer Karj does get a lot worse next turn. So it will be interesting to see what Fino does here. I think both players are actually pretty reasonable.
Really glad to see Fino on the Priest. I think we don't get many chances because of Fino's relegation to see just how good he is at every aspect of Hearthstone, and he chooses not to stream things like Priest because it's not necessarily the most engaging thing to stream. So really good reminder that when it comes to it, he can play whatever you want him to play.
Definitely.
Now, will Sif walk into this?
There's not really a world where he doesn't walk into it, right? You have to keep developing. That probably looks like something like the Umberwing plus the 1-drop, or Umberwing Hero Power, but that one's a little bit yuckier. Umberwing plus the 1-drop gets a lot done on the board. You can...
Yeah. But it also keeps him quite free. I don't think that's walking into. I think this is the avoidance line, even though obviously he takes some pretty bad damage next turn.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't walk into the Holy Nova and the Breath of Dreams, you're just going to get run over by the Imprisoned Vile Fiend. You got to take risks.
Yep. But tidying up seems reasonable. Just one of those turns.
I believe that Sif lost 1 damage here. He could attack face with his weapon, make it a 3-2, Divine Shield a 3-1, attack into the 3-3, and the 2-2 trades over the 2-2. So a little bit of a miss sequence there. He lost 1 damage.
Yep, I think that's right. Right, Fino. How would you like to proceed?
Generally, I wouldn't call that out because missing 1 damage in Hearthstone games sometimes just doesn't matter, and it matters not that much when your opponent's at 28 versus 27. But he is Tempo Demon Hunter, and squeezing out every last bit of damage can be really impactful.
Of all the people in the world, Galen, you are not allowed to say.
I want him to push the 1.
damage.
I want him to push the 1, Lorinda. Okay, I want him to push the 1.
Right, Fino makes the straightforward play here, clears the board, and is still in good shape to tidy up the next board as well.
This turn is easy, but it's bad. It's easy in a bad way. Sif has bad options, and yeah, not very complicated. You're probably going to play the Satyr Overseer Hero Power and hit the 3-5, but blah. That's just gross.
Yeah, it's not very nice. And you said about the Vile Fiend, you said right at the start that this is the card you want, and you can see why now. It just trades into everything and sits there being a real nuisance.
In this specific matchup, it fits Priest's game plan really well. You want the Demon Hunter to load up on board so that you can AoE it. Demon Hunters normally want to try to play around it by only loading up with 1 or 2 threats. The Imprisoned Vilefiend kind of checks that because it's going to answer the 1 or 2 threats, but it also can't be interacted with for a very long time. So it kind of forces the Demon Hunter to play into your AoE removal spells.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's been happening. Obviously, this has been a pretty anti-Demon Hunter build with the Holy Novas in there as well. It's always a way of just showing I am happy to leave this against Demon Hunter. And to be fair, looking through the list, if we'd looked through every single list perfectly rather than just looking at the top and bottom card, which is my normal way of looking through 40 lists at once, might have noticed that this was this cube priest, as I think people tend to call it now. Makes a lot more sense that they queued it.
I imagine Fino's considering whether or not to use this last removal spell. I love the renew here. It plays a little bit off curve, but it just seems better than any other option. Psyche Split gets picked up. If Imprisoned Vilefiend doesn't get answered, then that is going to summon another large rush minion. Yep, Coin Skull. This is Sif's game plan for the last couple turns. Doesn't pan out usually, but it's the only one he's got.
Yep, weird things can sometimes come about. Well,
that's a good one.
It's funny how the more often that Demon Hunter gets nerfed, just the lower and lower its curve gets. Normally when things get nerfed, you sort of have to find convoluted ways to make your cards work, so your curve gets like higher. But Demon Hunter just responds to every nerf with, okay, then I'll play another 1-drop. Deal with that.
Well, you replace the broken Demon Hunter minions with the broken neutral minions.
Yeah. That's fair. And you get the extra consistency that goes with that.
What has happened to Demon Hunter with these history buff lists is that their early game, I think, is a bit more explosive, but they do tend to gas out quite a bit more in the late game. And
yeah,
overall, I think that hurts its win rate rather than helps it, but it does lead to some very strong starts. The last game that we saw, Sif versus Orange, with Sif being on the Demon Hunter versus Rogue, is an example of just how explosive it can be.
Fino's now pretty close to just having wrapped this one up.
Solmir can come down, deal with the board.
Yeah, if needed.
Right. I think it will be needed, but, you know, that's not a bad thing.
Haven't seen Fino look this serious in about 12 months. And there's something good about playing for a team that makes you play your best, because you're letting other people down as well as yourself if you lose. A lot of some people just find it hard to motivate themselves to play just for themselves.
I do believe that this is like Fino's first serious tournament in a bit.
Yeah, not counting the Masters tours, which I think he stated he's kind of taking easy for a year, I think, so he can. Yeah, he played a lot of Hearthstone in the last 2 or 3 years to get where he is. I think he's just enjoying streaming and taking it easy a little bit. So, yeah, I'd go along with that.
His stream has been doing really well, by the way. You know,
good.
Numbers are up.
He's a super person.
It's an enjoyable experience.
He's very suited to the job as well.
He's also suited to playing Hearthstone at a very high level. And, you know, Solmir is going to come out this turn, without a doubt.
Right.
The question is, how do you do any attacks first? If he plays a Solmir now, 5 minions are going to get summoned, and there's not going to be a history buff to get in play. I do believe that this is the correct ordering. The 4/6 can trade over the 3/1. And that probably locks it out.
Yeah, when you're fighting back against Demon Hunter and you're able to actually put damage into their face with any class, you tend to be in a great spot. The way that Demon Hunter gets wins beyond the 50% tends to be that the opponent levels the game, and then the Demon Hunter skulls and gets back in front again and does the final bit. But once you're actually hitting the Demon Hunter in the face without fear of being hit back, that's usually when the Demon Hunter is just done, and that is the end of everything. And we've seen the skull as well. Going to leave just Sword left for IG, the player that I think we know the least about, really, but he is in the playoffs in China in their top 8. So he got there through being the best performing player in the Gold Team Championships on IG. So the best performing player on the team who won the championships, or at least won the league stages.
That's very impressive.
So yeah, he's definitely a player to keep an eye out on. But he's struggled in playing outside of China. He hasn't done anything in the Masters tours that he's played at all. He's not really made an impact.
I think that's true with a lot of Chinese names, and it's why tournaments like this are really great to see. Is there's just the fact that they do a lot of stuff in the Chinese circuit, but we don't really hear about it because the two leagues are pretty isolated, I have to say. So, they can be very impressive accomplishments, and we just don't hear about them. So, we only see them 1 or 2 times on a broadcast. We can come away with a differing opinion of how good they are compared to how good they actually are.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, but when you're judging players based on did they make a silly mistake, like if you'd watched Orange yesterday and you had never seen Orange play before, you probably wouldn't even remember him as a top player. Just like, oh yeah, that guy wasn't that good. Because you're basing it on one game of Hearthstone. But if that's the only game of Hearthstone you've seen, and yeah, we have this with some of the Chinese players. We see them play a few games, 1 or 2 of them mess up, so you think, oh, they can't be very good. I when I first saw XC, I saw him make a catastrophically bad mistake that I don't think anybody in the world would make in the top 1,000 of any scene. I'm like, well, this guy's just hopeless. And every time I've seen him since, like, oh, okay, I was just completely wrong as usual.
Yeah, I mean, after getting a chance to see XC play, there's still a couple errors. I think he is prone to tilting and, prone to stress. But beyond that, there's a ton of great stuff that he's got going on. He's really good mindset in terms of figuring out what the opponent's game plan is. And he understands pre-specifically very well. So yeah, I love that we got a chance to see more of his gameplay. I do think we come away with a much better impression of him. And I do think he's a much stronger player than that, first 1 or 2 impressions would say.
Yeah, I mean, players that have been prone to stress when we first saw them on the scene. Hunter Ace.
Everyone.
Ball control. Yeah, I mean, even the ones that we can obviously see, you're right, it's everyone. But the ones where it's clear, because Sayin admitted to me once that he was prone to stress when he started, but he's had the same game face on every tournament since he started right through to now, and he's not prone to stress now. So when did it change? We will never know. But yeah, Hunter Ace and ball control in particular, too, that you could see were, in their early years, just panicking every turn. It just takes a little while to have that sink in, and I think XE is going to be a player to watch out for. But Sword is the next one up. He has got a lot of experience. I'm not sure what he did from 2017 to 2019. He's a player I remember from the old Team Story days, and then his achievements were very strong around then and sort of went missing. But to be signed for IG and winning and being their best player and being in the playoffs, I suspect he's been playing a lot of Hearthstone that we just don't know about in that black hole gap that we don't know.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me that a player for one of the best Chinese teams plays Hearthstone. I agree. That makes some sense. If you said that, I wouldn't even call that a hot take. I would just be like, yeah, you're right, Lorinda.
The obvious take. Maybe that can be something TJ and Sottle can talk about next time, like just obvious takes.
Right. Freezing cold takes. I mean, well, going back to your point, though, about stress, I imagine that for a lot of people, when they get to their first big result, it can almost feel like that's your one chance to prove how good you are, and you won't get chances in the future. And there can be a lot of undue pressure to be like, hey, I won't have, this is, the opportunity of a lifetime. I really will never have this chance again. And besides like the finals of a world championship, I think that everything is redoable. If you have the good skill set and a good mindset, you will find yourself back in those spots again and again. And when you get to that second or third top 8 or that second or third finals, that's when it starts to realize like, hey, this is going to come up in the future. It'd be great to win this now, but I am good enough to be back in this spot. I do not need to stress myself out about this one result because it is not the defining aspect of who I am as a pro Hearthstone player.
The person who did that the absolute best was Eddie. There was a tournament, I think it was Atlanta, but that could be wrong. It was a DreamHack in the USA anyway. And the story was all about Muzzy just is going to win this tournament, and Muzzy did, and he beat Eddie in the final. I don't think we mentioned Eddie's name once in the whole tournament, even though he was in the final. Just one of those events where we just ignored the other guy, the new guy we'd never heard of, that was Eddie. And you see what he's done since. He's won multiple tournaments since. He didn't panic. He didn't sort of say, casters ignored me. He just got on with his game and proved us all that we should have been talking about him in that final after all.
Yep, definitely. I mean, he went from the guy who lost to Muzzy at DreamHack Montreal in 2017 to Eddie, the guy who's won Master of Bucharest, tons and tons of other stuff. The Cyber League games, I might have botched the name of that tournament, but another very large tournament in China. Very impressive results throughout Grandmasters, a win at DreamHack Atlanta. And yeah, I definitely agree with you. Eddie is one person that sticks out to me the most as, not stressing himself out about the fact that, he only has one shot to do well, because very clearly he's good enough to make it and win multiple tournaments.
Yeah, and a future world champion, quite possibly in the making there. But enough of Eddie. Here's the matchup that I've been ranting about all week, and I'm not sure if I've convinced you yet. Mage loses to Priest, Galen. Job done. This is a slightly different Priest, to be fair.
Well, Priest loses to Mage. Job done.
No,
and
it doesn't.
I think both of those actually make sense. Both of them we could argue about, but it really comes down to the players playing them.
Yeah, and to be fair, this is a different Priest to the one I've been ranting about. This is a slightly lower curve Priest, which I think actually will give the Mage a little bit more chance than normal, because in the reason I think that the Priest tends to beat Mage is it just runs the Mage out of stuff quite easily. But this Priest has more minions, which means the Mage actually has targets for its removal, which in turn means the Priest actually has to struggle more to get its removal working.
Good news for Fino, though. He has a pretty nutty curve. Disciple of Galakron on 1, and he finds a Galakron himself. Fino's doing some cheeky emoting. That is definitely the Fino special.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone who's not dealt with Fino before has had an awakening this week. All right, the box is ready to go.
Highly recommend if you're playing against Fino in the future to squelch him immediately. It will only serve to benefit you.
Yeah, you're not going to have anything bad happen by not having that information. And then just randomly emote him as well while you're at it. Especially if he's streaming, just emote Fino, everybody. You should do that.
What's funny is that it's really similar to Fino's personality outside of the game. He's a very fun-loving guy. Very boisterous.
I thought you were going to say you should squelch him then.
Not in real life, but definitely in game.
Yeah, it is very similar. Yeah, he doesn't need to put on an act for his stream, if that's what you're saying. What you see with Fino is definitely what you get.
Sword has had the option to coin out a Twilight Drake here, but I don't really like it. I do think the game plan of trying to get the Reno down as early as possible is just the better one overall. Malygos gets picked up, which means that Twilight Drake gets a little bit less enticing. At the same time, though, it's a 4-9 rather than a 2-5, so yeah, you play the 4.
Which obviously is pretty irritating, but plenty of ways to deal with it. It's just a case of which one to choose.
Moar Penance clears off the 4-9.
That just looks so straightforward, doesn't it?
There's really nothing else.
Always find it amusing when control decks clash and they have this little thing that always happens at the start of the game where both of them play some minions as if it's going to matter. And it kind of matters because later on, obviously, anything that got wasted early in the game now can't be used. But in general, both control decks are kind of happy to get the stuff out of their hands, and none of these things actually make much difference to the outcome.
Fino got a neck rest. The Hearthstone pillow.
Yeah, he's digging in for the long haul here. Poor Fino, having to be the priest player.
That's 10 life?
I've just realised, actually, Boar probably just flat out refused to play priest.
That wouldn't surprise me. That sounds like something Boar would definitely do.
Like, he really doesn't like priest. He refuses to play it on stream.
That's a pretty big pickup from Fino's perspective. Second invoke means that Galakrond is going to be invoked once more, level up. Upgraded. Upgraded is the correct terminology, not level up.
I'm going to keep saying level up then.
Still decides to go for Galakrond because the difference between 1 and 2 minions is not that big in this kind of spot. And he also has Natalie Selena's follow-up, so just it simplifies the game plan for Fino's perspective.
Yeah, this is where Mage can struggle. This is another part of the struggles Mage has against most priests, is the problem of trying to put down 2 things in a turn when all your cards cost 8. Makes things very difficult. This is a way of getting down 2 things in a turn quite effectively.
They're 3/6s, but yeah, I do agree with you that this seems like the realistic play. Natalie could still come down, chew up one of these 3/6s, summon an 8/7. That's a decent tempo option. The other options just don't look that great. Kronks for an 8/8, maybe, as a potential play.
I'm trying to work out how much Fino actually cares. Not how much he cares, but how much, in this spot, how much the priest cares against the mage about these 2 3/6s.
The problem is that you still need to develop. If you don't develop here, then you're just going to get even further behind.
But this is a decent way of doing that, right? If both of them have to go in, you've made your Kronks better. You might pick up another minion along the way if these have to both trade in and play a 3rd minion, for instance. I don't see that happening. But also this sets up your Holy Nova if they both trade in, which is a big deal. I don't think Sword's going to fall for that one, but it's just a way of getting a little bit more out of your Shield of Galakrond.
If everything works out, then you're going to be in a great spot. The problem is that your opponent has a brain and will, and I don't mean to say this comes out like much more rudely than I meant it to, but you're playing against a really smart player. And they have a brain, and they can use it to figure out, hey, this is what my opponent's trying to set up for. I can just, play around it. I'm going to use a single Ray of Frost, which is, I think, a really smart play that Sword just did there. Now it's much more awkward for Fino. It's like the same spot. The turn has progressed by 1. He has the same tools to answer the board, but the board's gotten bigger, and it's gotten more awkward.
Yes and no. Looking at potential Moag Nova here and just taking some more damage. This is where having a lot of experience in the matchup helps. You know how much damage you're willing to take. But Fino's played it from the other side enough times.
There's also the ability to go Rusty Raider plus Holy Nova, but I don't like either of those. I think saving the AoE here would make some sense. Oh, well that is big. An Amazing Reno. You probably take the one that's the most impactful. Amazing Reno is the most impactful, and
but is it? It is.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, because Zephrys is going to be active later in the game, and you get to preserve your hero power, because Reno hero power is a little bit unpredictable.
I don't think value is going to be the thing that Fino worries about from this point on.
So looking to see How soon he plays the Reno, if you think he's got enough value, or if he thinks he's got enough value more to the point, then trying to turn it around would be good. Temple Enforcers might actually be really good, the way this has worked out, just because they cost 5 and they're big. So you get to play 2 things in a turn, rather than the Mage who's struggling to play 2 things in a turn, although Alex Straza sorts that out.
If Temple Enforcer was introduced in Classic, that card would have been complained about. 5 mana, 5/6, give a minion +3 health. That's insane.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When you're facing against Azure Drakes and, Chilling Yetis.
Yeah. Just in this spot, it's actually not too bad, right? Because you're trying to get a 5/6 and a 5/9 in one turn is actually something to worry about.
Sure, that's very reasonable.
Just because of how this is laid out, which is really weird. I never thought I'd be casting the final of a big event saying that Temple Enforcer was a big deal. Oof, Sword possibly overextended by 1 minion here.
Yeah, the Holy Nova now looks really smart. I would have liked to see the hero power come down first from Fino, but I don't think it should really matter.
What would he be looking for? I mean, you tend to draw first. It's always
you just draw first because who knows, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So this is going to be a weird few turns, of course. Obviously, the box will be played when Sword feels that he's out of other options, but there's no hurry to play it. He would like the Priest to have depleted resources first itself, so makes sense to just fish around a little bit here.
1 mana Murazond.
And good Hearthstone lessons. Play Varanus, don't worry about the fact you're getting rubbish value from it. It's a 7/6. Just worry about that.
The game is starting to get really tricky for Fino. He can answer this board, but the problem is that what does he do with the next one, right? Amazing Reno could come down, just wipe this away. Sure. But there's still a 1 mana dragon in Sword's hand.
Time Rip Temple Enforcer is not too horrible.
Yeah, but it's not good, right? The 5/6 just gets traded over, and Fino really doesn't have any way to deal extra damage.
Then drop a Galakron into whatever was traded. But yeah, he's looking after this a bit more carefully. I understand this.
I like the partial clear line. I think it does make a lot of sense. Using the Amazing Reno this turn just doesn't seem that great. Another thing to keep in mind...
This is something that I think...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is something I think has made Hearthstone a lot better in the last 2 years, is the fact that it's very hard to just go trade, my things kill your things now. You have to think about trades over 2 or 3 turns. That makes it a lot more interesting.
I'm more interested in Reno now, though. Oh, actually, no. What am I saying?
Considering Natalie here? 8-12?
Crazy, right?
Yeah, 8-12, but you take 7.
8-13.
That's what he's got to just make sure he's okay with.
Yeah, the Natalie looks great here.
So you're not getting a Natalie, just got to be comfortable with the damage you're taking.
From Phoenix's perspective, do you play a 1/2 or do you hero power?
I think that it's getting to the point where Amazing Reno is going to be played fairly soon, so I think I hero power and take that last little bit of value while I can.
The most amount of stuff. Okay, so he's not going for the Natalie Celine, he's going for the Amazing Reno
he's
instead.
going to use the Natalie Fordo on whatever Sword does next. Is why he's gone this way.
Yep.
So rather than have an 8-12 that challenges the board, but you take a lot of damage, you get an 8-5 or an 8-6 or something that doesn't necessarily look as great, but it's the only thing on the board.
Very slow turn from Sword here.
Yeah, Fino's been a little fortunate in the order of his card draws. Like I was saying about how the mage likes to be able to use its removal on your stuff. Well, Sword having to have a slow turn because he's had nothing to blow up for a turn or two. And that also goes back to how Fino played the previous turn, of course. Oh my. Here come the big things. 110.
Wormwall Challenger.
Do-it-yourself Warmore Challenger Club.
Wormwall Challenger is just a crazy card, by the way. 3 mana 110. A lot of people don't realize just how insane a 3 mana 110 minion is.
Yeah, I struggle to associate with that one because the second I saw Challenger, I thought it was the best card in the set. It's like the only time I've ever been right on a preview. But yeah, I mean, 10 health is just nuts because you can build on it as well. It's just going to be around for a long time. And maybe your opponent will turn it into a 3/7 for you. This has not been a successful box so far.
No, sir.
And the only thing that was successful about it is creating a 6/13, and that's going to get eaten by Natalie in a moment.
There are
So
also a bunch of 5/6s in Sword's deck, which has positives and negatives. Positive because they're 5/6s, but also it shuts off the Highlander card in Zephyrus. I believe that both of the other ones have been played so far, but Zephyrus still exists.
Yeah, that's correct. Pretty sure. Oh, Fino's smiling. His opponent played box last turn, and he's just drawn Murazond. And if this was a stream, it would already be on the board. But he does have some very good plays available to him.
The Natalie is just so perfect, right? The one thing about Fino, though, is that he knows about the Amazing Reno in hand, right?
Yeah. The thing is, he doesn't... So, joking aside, the Natalie's perfect. I think we'll see that. But he's well sensible to think about this because copying a box, you only get one chance, and that is right now. And box is a powerful card.
Also, by the way, does Natalie become an 8/14 or an 8/7?
Order. Ugh.
I believe it becomes an 8/7.
I think it becomes an 8/14.
No, it becomes an 8/20.
It might become an 8/20.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it starts as an 8/1 and you get plus, and then you get even more.
Right.
So yeah, that does make sense.
Good to know. I have not seen this interaction before. I don't play enough Priest.
Unbelievable.
Well, that one's excusable.
I just got there, but I was slightly too slow. Disappointed in myself. Yeah, so that's definitely better than playing the Murazond. I thought it was anyway, but it's a shame. I wanted to see Fino's at his happiest when he's playing boxes.
Five, 6 gets pulled, and I'd say one of the most inopportune times. Sword would be really interested in playing this Amazing Reno, but suddenly he just loses an extra 5/6.
Yeah, does he have anything better though? Otherwise, this Natalie's just going to kill him.
I mean, he could just leave up the 8/17. I don't actually think it's that scary. The 8/17 is going to be okay. Well, on this specific board state, I don't think the Natalie Celine single-handedly wins the game. It's going to kill a lot of minions, but only kills one minion at a time. Sword just keeps developing and developing. I think he's going to be in a really strong spot.
Yeah, that's fair.
Big issue would be overreacting to this Natalie.
But also, he hasn't got much else to do, and he does have to worry about Apotheosis if he leaves the Natalie up, so all of his damage will just be ignored.
Sure.
But maybe he'll want to bait the Apotheosis. Maybe that'll be a positive for him, because he's got the Alex in hand.
But at the same time, he does have, he does have a Siamat. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. The 8/17 is still kind of on trade duty. Oh, okay.
Now it's a 9/19 with Divine Shield. How do you like that?
My bad. Sand Breath off of the Amazing Reno. Something to also keep in mind, Kronks is no longer active.
Yep.
That keeps
That's an interaction
happening.
we've seen surprisingly often this week.
I imagine there was probably a turn where Fino could have developed it and it would have been good over what he ended up doing. Not that it's going to matter, but something to keep in mind. As soon as he got the amazing Reno from the Envoy of Lazul, it might have been a wise idea to start thinking about using the Kronks earlier rather than later.
I think Fino's turn here is all about how do I force my opponent to Reno without using anything. He wants to get on with this game. He can't until the Reno's been played. So, for instance, you want to Murozond here. You get an 8-8 and a 6-6, and you kill some stuff, and you look great. But it gets Reno'd, it's too much investment.
Right.
So he wants to develop some stuff to try and get the Reno going, but not too much stuff.
I like his Sandhoof.
Yeah, that looks good. That's a irritating enough problem.
And from Sora's perspective, I really like an aggressive Alexstrasza push with a Murozond as backup. You could Murozond first so that the Breath of the Infinite does not damage any of your minions, and then Alexstrasza.
Yeah. Yeah, the positive for Sword is he's not dying too soon. He's going to have notifications before he dies, so he's not going to get Alex and hit for 15. So he can afford to set things up.
It just seems like a good turn. Sure, the Sandhoof Water Barrier stays in play, and an Apotheosis could come down, but then you're using the Apotheosis, and it makes the Amazing Reno much cleaner, I think.
Yeah, you want to get this Apotheosis over with so that you can play Alex.
Right.
You can't really play Alex onto this board until the Apotheosis is gone. Okay, well this is what Fino's been sort of waiting for. An opportunity to once again build on a empty board. With Murozond in hand, that's the danger.
Pretty interesting to note, this Malygos' Flame Strike is actually going to do a lot of work against Fino's game plan.
Yes
It's
and no.
It's going to set the Amet to 2 health, so every single minion will have 2 health following that. Puzzle box.
There's the real box. Here we go again. Needs to be better than the last box was rubbish. It was a garbage box.
Was the box even the right play?
Yes?
No. There has to have been a better line, right?
He gets to Murozond at the end of all
Whoa.
this if he's in a half-decent spot.
That's big.
Ouch.
Oh no!
Oh no!
The box was so bad, Lorinda. There had to have been a better line. Something like, Malygos' Flame Strike plus 1 mana Murozond, summon a 2/7 and a 5/6.
I don't know if you've practiced box enough. Boxes are usually pretty powerful things.
I know,
okay.
but he had pretty powerful things as an option.
Well,
Fino's now
that
ahead.
box
Fino
was
has like
pretty-
multiple ways of winning this. Now might be a turn to Murozond and box back.
So the only problem with that, and I think you might be right, is Fino now has to just not die.
Right.
And he wins easily. Like he just has to kill everything and wins easily. But yeah, Fino and Box, name a more iconic duo.
I think the box is a lot better for Fino than it is for Sword. It's not just because it's Fino. It's because he does not have a lot of options, and Sword did. Oh, the box just doesn't even get cast. Excuse me.
Okay.
That's the second time that I have blanked on an interaction in this game.
I didn't know that interaction, I've got to admit. I thought it cast it.
It's because Sword is not casting it. The Tortolan Pilgrim is casting it.
Oh, because it's from a pilgrim. Okay, sure.
I think if I had a multiple choice test on that one, I probably would have gotten it right, but just off the top of my head, I did not.
Yeah, if I rewound and watched the turn, sure.
Right.
I get that. Agree with you. But still the right play, just generating big things.
Important to note that Renew discovered a mage spell because Fino is amazing Reno.
Yep.
And ends up being Evocation, which is, 8 more mage spells.
Oh. After the evocation we saw earlier in the week against Casey in this matchup. This could be some revenge for the rest of world teams.
One thing to keep in mind is that even if T1 wins this series, the match is not over. We are doing a best of 3, best of 5. We might have 10 more games of Hearthstone after this, depending on what happens.
Might be 11. Fino hasn't won yet.
That's true.
Although we're both expecting him to, I feel. No, I absolutely love this format. I know I tend to just love everything about everything I cast, but this best of 3, best of 5 thing is something that I really hope we see again, because it's so much more going on. It's so much more Hearthstone as well. I like the fact the final is like a standalone day. I think that's really cool, because you can do it that way.
You can do a lot
nobody's going to broadcast
stuff
one best
if you have just the final on the last day. It becomes a very big deal, I would say.
Yeah. And I know that these Chinese events used to finish with a best of, I want to say 11. So each player got 2 decks in the last hero standing, and they were pre-assigned, I think. But that ended up with, if you win the first and second counters, you just win 6-0 or 6-1.
Right.
So they sort of fell flat quite often. This is a much better way of doing it.
I do really enjoy the format of having multiple decks that you don't end up having to play. We have seen 10 deck formats in Grandmasters, but there were a couple issues with it. And I think one of the big ones gets solved by only banning 4 instead of banning 6.
Yeah, I think the key is for formats to keep changing. If we saw this format every week with banning the 4 best decks, give or take, I know it's not quite like that, it would get boring. So every tournament having a different format, especially when it's a team tournament in the first place and lots of things going on, I think it's fun to see lots of different ways to approach it, make people have to think about different things all the time.
Important to remember that the game is nowhere close to being over right now. At all.
Right, they're still playing this game that largely revolves at its heart around the apotheosis. But also there's this battle for tempo going on. There's also Fino, what's he going to get from the evocation? So he wants to have a more empty hand than normal. And obviously what you pointed out, that Galakron not being active is also a big deal here.
We're going to see at least 2 more Reno spells. We're going to see at least 5 more mage spells, or 6 more mage spells, excuse me. We might even see 12, depending on if Sword casts its evocation next turn or not. Lightning Bolts, where does that go?
That's crucial.
Own face doesn't
goal.
Really matter. That one does not matter.
Yeah, it's basically 0 because Alex Straz is going to take him down to 15 at some point anyway.
Interesting to note that Sword has left up his 8/8s to be attacked into, which strikes me as odd. I felt like playing the Cartoot Defender had a lot of merit last turn. Why didn't he play the Cartoot Defender?
Don't know. Maybe he thought that Fino just can't deal with it, which, to be fair, is a good assessment. Maybe he's trying to...
If he just can't deal with it, then playing it makes more sense. And it also sets up guaranteed lethal if the 8/8 can't connect into another 8/8.
No, I mean, he can't... What I mean is, maybe he thought he couldn't deal with the 8/8s, so didn't need to protect them. But...
Well, he can deal with 1.
Yeah?
And well, 1 is more than 0.
So for 1, I think he's trying to bait the apotheosis. I think he
But
really wants that
just
out of the
doesn't
hand.
really bait anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's worked out horribly for him.
It
Whatever,
just seems
rightly
like
or wrongly. Yeah.
Oh,
So you'd have hidden it behind those in good old tradition for taunt minions to get in the way and try to hit Fino for lethal the turn after. That does make sense.
that
Big time.
apotheosis is huge. Hopefully,
Because
Fino has
Alex
recognized that this Kronks is not going to be playing a giant taunt or, dealing 5, gaining 5. It is not active. I imagine he knows that interaction. He's played enough Mage and Priest.
Yeah, he's played enough Mage. It is a mistake you have to make once, though. It's one of those sort of... I don't know. We use the word muscle memory. I understand that that's scorned upon, but it is kind of a muscle memory thing. You just expect Kronks to work. Sort of like you expect patches to work.
Apotheosis here has done a lot to make Sword's life miserable. Evocation could come down. I still can't get over the fact that the Card 2 Defender didn't see play last turn.
Yeah, the more I look at it, the more it was just like maybe his only way to win the game was to go Alex into 2/8/8 hit you.
Well,
and putting
even
Kartut in the way was the way to do that.
It's not necessarily his only way to win the game. It's just seems a lot better way to win the game than not playing it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we say that Sword, I don't know. I'm just going to backtrack on that. I was going to say something really dumb, but yeah.
Grave Runes again?
Oh.
It's absolutely miserable.
Oh my. And again, Fino doesn't have to formulate any sort of offense. He just has to work out the best way not to lose. Now, usually in Hearthstone, the best way not to lose is to kill your opponent, but here he really doesn't have to. He just has to stop 4 cards. And he knows what those cards are, I believe, so...
And 10 spells. And he does not know what those spells are.
Sure.
We are getting down to the wire here in this first match. Fino has a pretty soft checkmate. Still waiting to see what spells happen from the Reno. That's going to be the main decider here. All you can do in these kinds of spots is kind of lie in wait,
Yeah, I think he's going through his mind. Do I play the Kronks and risk some twisting nether happening, or do I not do it? He was just trying to work out how many cards in Hearthstone would make this bad.
That silence could have landed on the 8/7 and made this a lot more exciting. 8/7 still is Grave Runes and has Lifesteal, which makes it a lot less exciting.
Yeah, and Sword can't just sit and wait. It just gives Fino more resources if he does. So... unless he's hoping for a Reno box. But he's had 2 boxes. How many do you want?
I don't think boxes have really been on Sword's side so far this game.
They really haven't. They've both been pretty awful. Gotta say, T1 have looked absolutely superb through this tournament.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Good plays all around.
It's a bit of a meme for cast to say that the team in front in the final has played the best, but they have looked the best team so far.
I don't even think we've gotten to what I'd call the star player of the tournament. Board Control still has his match to play, even if loses this. But
with that wacky druid nonsense, I don't think I've ever liked a deck that Board Control's played in his whole career.
And he just still wins with them. It's crazy.
He spent a year playing Subject 9 Hunter, which I still think is a rubbish deck, even after he's won tournaments with it.
I would agree with you. Flame Ward pops. Fino's starting to deal damage. The 6-1 is not getting answered. There's a taunt in the way. Lightwell, surprisingly decent just because it stops weird Alex Straza lethals.
Yep.
Three damage in fatigue. Fino has a 2-turn clock right now. Four more spells are getting played.
And that's his outright, is to play those spells. So I might even have been tempted to play Doomsayer this turn, to force Fino to spend a turn tidying it up. I'm not saying it's good, I'm saying it just looks better than this.
Fino can Soul Mirror away this 8/8 and just start going face, set up the 2-turn, make it pretty guaranteed. Losing the lifesteal minion might not be a great idea right now. Then you have to start thinking about, how do you lose this game? Do you lose against mind control? Is that the only way you lose? Mind controlling the life-stealing minion.
I mean, he can take 20 damage in one turn if Sword pyros him for 10 with Reno, and then he pyros himself for 10 with Reno.
Right.
So there's outs. We saw yesterday Dead Draw actually set that one up for 10 damage, but obviously it didn't happen, so conceded straight away afterwards.
Another Grave Runes. Probably not what Sword wants to see. There is one more spell remaining. This Card 2 Defender still hasn't been played.
Yeah, which makes your point that was already a strong point even stronger. Like, what were you planning to do with this?
Lethal is being set up. I believe that Fino has the ability to Penance and Apotheosis here. If nothing dies... Well, that can die, but if nothing else dies... Fino, I believe, had Lethal.
The strangest interactions happen with Reno.
This is definitely a class that benefits you the more you play it. You start learning all these weird interactions with different spells that happen, 1 in 100, 1 in 300 times.
Yes. No, it's very important as well. Like,
Radiance came out. There's still the chance that another spell he's played. I don't even know what that could be to win the game.
Nothing in standard by the look of it. First set goes 3-1 to T1. And they didn't even need to have ball control play, and puts them in a fantastic position to win this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty great series from T1. It started with some amazing luck on Orange's side. The Face Stalker was as good as it's ever going to get with a Faceless Lackey. But all the way through, some really stellar play. Not too many issues. From IG's perspective, we did see a couple small errors and a few big ones. Small errors, Sif missing 1 damage, don't think it would have impacted the game. Big ones at the very end would be Sword not playing the Card 2 Defender, and I think that had a real shot at changing the outcome there. But, they got to pick it up for series number 2. We are not done. We have not crowned a champion yet. This is only one of potentially 3 best of 5s. If IG wins this next one, we are going to another 3rd and final best of 5. So, they've got their work cut out for them. They still have to win 2 best of 5s in a row. But, if any team from China can do it, it is going to be IG. They've been playing very good Hearthstone, besides a couple errors here and there.
Yeah, and they've been playing a lot of Hearthstone as well, and that helps up to a point, but they've not been playing enough to burn out or anything. They've been playing a lot of Hearthstone for months on end, so they're all on form. But I think the problem they have got is that Orange got out of the right side of bed today. I think if they played him yesterday, you would hope to run into Orange off form. Orange off form is still really good at Hearthstone, but was definitely not on his best yesterday. But today, forgetting the high roll, he just looked absolutely on point. And I think Fino has looked also absolutely on point, and Boar's always on point. So they can't afford to have those plays like the Kartut play. They've got to play absolutely spot on. I think that IG might have slightly the better lineup of the two teams.
Mm-hmm. I agree
so
with
it's
that.
not over for them by any stretch here.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing about that series is the ringer from T1 didn't even come out. It was only Fino and Orange playing in that series. Board Control didn't play a single game. So IG definitely has their work cut out for them, Lorinda.
Yep, let's take a break, let them do their bans for the next round. Let's see if that Demon Hunter gets banned away. That's the big question going into the second set here. We're going to take a short break. We're back with the second set in just a few moments.
Really good language hacker. I think that we saw a lot of great plays and a lot of outplays too. T1 has been looking pretty on fire, starting with Orange's dominant performance on Rogue, losing to that Demon Hunter from Sif, which I also think was a really good performance for the Chinese players. But from there on, Fino swept out with Priest, and they didn't even have to play board control in their series. And I've been talking about board control's great play throughout this entire week. Uh, he's probably the best player in the tournament right now, just based off of the results in this tournament alone. And, they haven't even had to bring him out yet.
Sorry. Yeah, he had a pretty powerful performance over the past few days. Notably, yesterday when he almost soloed the opposing team by himself. I think he got 5 wins out of the total 6, which is pretty incredible. Now, one thing I have to ask you before we hop into the second match. We've mentioned before that teams have the option to change their bans if they so choose between matches. With the performance of Priest, generally in this tournament, but even specifically in this last set, with Fino being able to close out a couple more games with it, do you think that it would be in IG's interest to maybe switch up their bans and maybe ban Priest, or do you think the pre-existing bans of the generally more well-known dominant classes in the meta are kind of the way they're going to go?
So I do think that Priest is pretty powerful in this format, but that's just by nature of the fact that it is the fifth best deck or the sixth best deck. And the bans that you're seeing are bans on Hunter, Warrior, Rogue, Demon Hunter, etc. And those are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, Priest is pretty powerful, but it's not because it's a ban, it's because it's the best of the worst in my mind. And if you take a look at the bans that IG has and T1 has for the second match of the day, they actually have the same bans. IG has banned Warrior, Warlock, Hunter, and Demon Hunter from T1, and T1 has banned Warrior, Rogue, Warlock, and Hunter. So we are literally seeing a mirror match again in terms of picks and bans for match 2.
Okay, so like you said, the bans are going to be the same, which means, it actually doesn't mean this, but do you think we're going to be seeing kind of the same openers, or is this where mind games start playing in and the teams have to kind of switch up what they queue first to kind of throw their opponent off?
I do think that there can be a big edge in LHS if you can guess correctly what your opponent is queuing game 1, especially with 6 decks. There's always the room for a counter queue. We saw that yesterday where people were queuing Shaman first, which is not something that Druid and Priest. But looking at this game 1 of match 2 that we have, I believe that XC will be on Priest and Fino will be on Mage. So it's actually going to be a mirror of what we just saw in that last match, or that last game of match 1.
Cool, interesting. And I'm excited to see Fino's specialty Mage against what appears to have been XC's specialty this tournament, Priest. So battle of the Titans here with their classes.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. That being said, I do believe that... Oh, excuse me. What am I saying? Fino and XC are actually switched. Sword was playing Mage last round. Fino was on the Priest, so we're going to see it from a different perspective. They're playing the same matchup, slightly different lineup. XC instead of Sword for Invictus Gaming. But it'll be interesting to see how Fino approaches this from the other side of Mage versus Priest.
Definitely, yeah. We've seen over the course of the tournament that there are a few different ways in terms of the style of play for the mage decks. We've seen some people be very greedy and hold back resources as long as possible. And I think, seen some people play it out a bit more aggressively, but it could also come down to the matchup. Do you think this is a matchup where the mage needs to play more aggressively, or do they need to slow things down?
Mage is the one that needs to kill the Priest. If Mage doesn't set up an aggressive board state, they will lose the game. Priest has infinite value. They are totally fine playing defensively because if the game lasts 30 turns, they're just going to run over the Mage with value. They have a hero power that adds, a 2 to 8 mana minion to their hand every single turn, so they curve out pretty efficiently after turn 10, turn 11. And they will in the late game have the inevitability. That being said, I still think that Mage has a lot of gas in this matchup. If they get an aggressive board state early on, and by early I mean anywhere before turn 13, they are in a very good spot to win this matchup. Priest's tools are limited, and if you run them out of their important cards like Soul Mirror, you can just run them over due to their awkward removal in the late game.
Okay, that makes sense. Game has been pretty slow starting out. Neither player really hasn't much to develop. Fino threw up a secret just to kind of spend mana, keep hand size smaller in case he draws stuff that's not really playable, which happens to be the case. And XC, we see him not really wanting to develop much. He holds the Fate Weaver, thinking that he probably values the discount once it's activated much more than he values just the 3/6 right now. And we see him going for a Reno here, which is actually kind of surprising to me. Do you think he would have tempoed out the first Reno of the Relicologist here?
It makes sense. Playing for tempo as the priest is a really good idea. That's one way to keep mage off board without having to use your premium removal spells. And from Xy's perspective, what else does he really have to do here? Kronk's Dragonhoof, that doesn't really make any sense. There's a Galakron in hand. Saving the Kronks for after the Galakron, it just seems like a good idea. And it's just the biggest minion, right? So why not play the biggest minion?
Fair enough. I tend to be pretty greedy when I play decks, so I was thinking, well, 12 turns from now, when this Reno is active, Fino won't be able to play around an active Reno the Relicologist. Right. But later is a problem we can worry about later. Like you said, tempo is kind of important.
Priest generally has infinite mana to spend, it feels like. They always have a handful of cards.
Makes sense. How do you think Fino's going to navigate this without having premium, or I guess an easy way to deal with this Veil Weaver?
If he really wanted to, he could do something like Ray of Frost, Arcane Intellect Ping, but then you're overdrawing a card.
Mm-hmm.
Turn looks pretty ugly if it's just Ray of Frost Ping. If he wants to use... this is just the tempo option, right? It does make his curve a little bit more awkward in the future, but...
I was going to ask, do you ever leave the Veil Weaver? Because XC has close to full hand. How much can he actually cycle? Or is it scary enough that you do want to kind of just see it gone?
Second question for you, Language Hacker, because this one is, I think, a bit more interesting. Blatant Decoy was offered for Fino. Fino's lowest cost minions are 8/8s.
True.
Was there ever a world where summoning 2 8/8s off your Blatant Decoys was actually a winning strategy?
There is a world. However,
Sure.
I'm not certain that this is that world. The minions that Fino has in hand, while they are 8/8s, the battle cries that they give, I feel, are much more powerful than the fact that they are just 8/8s themselves. Alex Straza, the original one, is one of the most important tools in this matchup, because eventually when Mage manages to stick a board big enough, the Alex Straza can come down offensively to either completely kill the Priest or pressure them to a point where they can't deal with the board and heal themselves. And on top of that, this is not an infinite resource game for Mage, so the Mage generally does need a few more oomph cards, and Dragon Queen Alex Straza does provide that oomph. Yeah.
That's a good answer. I like that answer. Gold
you.
star on that answer. I agree with everything you just said.
Excellent. I tried very hard.
Second Fate Weaver here could come down.
Yeah, definitely. Now the two Invokes have come out, the discount is very... I mean, it's kind of like an old Emperor Thorson, right? With one tick. Discounting, 10 mana, 8 mana worth of cards is insane.
That is powerful.
Look at all these cheap cards. And the flexibility of being able to play all these minions for cheap, both, and not even just the minions, having removal discounted and minions discounted means that the Priest can take a really large... They can just have many swing turns now where they remove a thing, spawn a thing, and so on. And the discount just works in so many different ways.
For sure. This game is going to be really exciting. Fino has a ton of burst, and Xe has a ton of healing, and there's going to be a bunch of spells cast in between. Amazing Reno is going to give both players access to a ton of various things that could occur. Galakron, Apotheosis, Sandhoof, Waterbear, and Amazing Reno is all armor gain or life gain for XC, which means that in many respects, this Pyroblast plus Zephyrus burst damage is going to be checked for quite a while. But at the same time, Fino still has an overwhelming amount of pressure.
Yeah, The Alexstrasza here is kind of interesting. We've talked about Apotheosis being very important in this matchup to kind of heal back up after an offensive Alex comes down. But Fino has so much stuff to do with this hand that he thinks it's fine to just throw the Alex down as a threat, with the upside that if XC doesn't have good ways to both remove and heal back up, he can start trying to close out the game very quickly with the burn, like you just said, Pyroblast in hand and a Zephyrus. And this is the added benefit of if XC does have the answers and has a good swing here, Fino can just develop pretty.
These are high power hands. Like, just look at what's happening right now. XE has like the 7 best cards in his deck in hand right now, and Fino has like the 10 best cards outside of his deck in his hand right now.
These are definitely the most interesting games where both players have absolutely incredible hands and there's so much stuff going on both sides.
CMAT overdrawn, that's not good.
Definitely not great. XC is a bit lower in terms of hand size. That means he'll have, on average, less removal and less threats or checks. So it may not be the end of the world that CMAT gets milled here, but if the game goes on long enough, every threat could end up mattering. So it is possible that when the game goes on long enough, Fino missing out on that threat through no fault of his own, Reno just decided to draw an extra card there. It might end up, being the make or break of this matchup.
Now this is really interesting. XE has the ability to steal this in multiple different ways. Murazond, Soul Mirror, he could even disappear it if he really chooses. I don't think that option is a great idea, but Murazond definitely has some applications here.
Yep. Generally, denying Astromancer Solarian is very powerful in this matchup because it can be a very big removal tool or burst tool or like a power generator tool for the mage. But like you said, I don't know if it's worth committing an entire Reno for that because Reno is also one of your answers for a big Dragon Queen Alexstrasza board or the cleanup into a puzzle box if that is what Fino decides to go for eventually.
Basically, what you're saying is there's a lot to think about from both sides, and right now they have everything in their hands that players need to think about. So this is like, it could go any of which ways. There's lots of various factors that are, going to influence it every single turn. The Reno hero power is going to change things dramatically depending on what's going to be played. But yeah, this is just a very complicated situation that the players are in. Caligos gets picked up. 0 mana Pyroblast in hand.
Conjurer's Calling picked up as well. Extra resources for Fino,
That's
not
crazy.
bad. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. This is a very strong play from Fino here, and I like that he didn't actually Conjurer's Calling the Caligos. One of the easiest ways for Priest to deal with a board of big, large minions is by going Soul Mirror, and Caligos has protection against that because of how much health it has in comparison to its attack.
Rena's going to come down, absolutely, without a doubt. Xy's going to shut off the Astromancer Solarian.
Big deny here from XC being able to deny Fino's Astromancer Solarian, but of course, from Fino's perspective, you can't play around the amazing Reno every game. They can't have it every single game, right?
Oh, for sure.
I also like that XC found a way to kind of greed out the Galakron and make sure he can get the amazing Reno online first, because overriding the Reno later on with Galakron, first of all, is another full board removal, but also leaves you with a hero power that in general might be more useful, because the high variance from Reno's hero power can end up being very detrimental, as we've seen even in this tournament where it cast something like Shadow Council and replaced someone's entire hand with something that was quite a bit more useless.
Hacker. We're in this game.
Yes.
There's a Pyroblast in hand. 0 mana Soul Mirror is double Murazond. Why are we focusing on Shadow Council? Look what's happening right now.
I understand. I'm trying to give
Caligos
people
from the Priest. That's now an amazing Reno.
Yeah, you're right.
Turn after turn, these are so powerful. Mana Burn comes out. That shuts off so many of XC's options next turn.
Yeah,
But
but
does it
Pyroblast
really-
can't be hard cast. The discounts from the Fate Weaver is definitely showing through here. Even with something like a Mana Burn coming out, XC still has plenty of mana to navigate through the next turn. He doesn't have to pay a full 8 mana for the Murazond. He could play a 6 if he so chooses.
What are these dragons? Craves never clears the board.
It does, but it also damages Fino's board. Do you think that's in his favor, or is it in XC's favor if Fino's Crazy Nethering comes down to simplify the water elementals?
I don't know. Fino needs to figure that out. He does not have that much time left.
I think he has enough time here. He's got at least 40 seconds here to kind of figure it out. He correctly identified that Alex was probably what he needed to do here. The Caligos isn't threatening enough for him to kind of overreact to, so he thought that he'd check the box here on the Alex and then have enough time left over to decide which of these dragons needs to be played, if at all needs to be played. Looks like he decides that it's in his best interest to not clear the board, knowing that his water elementals unfreeze before XCs based on the Soul Mirror interaction.
XC has the ability to cast a 0-mana Pyroblast this turn. Galakrond could come out and just deal with the 8/8 if he so chooses. Murozond could come out and summon another 8/8 as well.
Are you leaning one way or the other too much between these plays? Because I am leaning one way, but I'm curious what you think.
I do like the Galakrond this turn.
Yes, I like it as well. Being able to cleanly clear this up, it's clear that Fino doesn't have a good answer for Caligos, so just getting rid of Fino's development while maintaining his own, I think is probably one of the best things XC can do this turn.
Does he even... If this Water Elemental wasn't cleared, would he have lethal? I don't think so. But Pyroblast can come down. I mean, he could have gone Pyroblast, Galakrond, plus Kronk, so he had 15 burst right now. I would love to see this Pyroblast just cast face. I don't really think it's ever going to have another target.
I like this as well. It's very unlikely this will target a minion. If Caligos sticks around, I think XC is just happy about it, and if it doesn't, it's going to be very difficult to find 10 mana to play the Pyroblast. Fino has already notably played Alexstrasza, so there's no really healing left in the deck other than a Cartridge Defender or perhaps Zephyrus, but if Zephyrus is used for healing, especially when the mage is closer to fatigue and not for a sort of finishing move, the mage will quickly just start to run out of resources and die to fatigue.
Deathwing Dragonlord clears off this board, but it also dies. Fino would love to conjure his calling afterwards, but there's just not enough health on the Deathwing Dragonlord. If it had literally one more, it would stay alive. Be a great conjurer's calling target, but that's not the case.
Yeah, he'll have to settle for something a little bit different. I don't think he's quite at the point where Box needs to come down. I think he'd like to either bait out a bit more from XC first, or just empty his hand a little bit to make room for something like card generation or card draw to make sure he doesn't lose any more important cards from his deck.
Absolutely love this play from Fino. He's giving a little bit of tempo with the Twilight Drake, and he's also giving a must-answer threat in terms of Doomsayer. So even if the Doomsayer gets cleared, there's still a 4/10 in play. And if the Doomsayer goes off, the 4/10, losing it kind of stinks, but it's not an important resource from Fino's perspective. So overall, really like what Fino did here.
Yep, a lot of refill, so I like this a lot as well. Trying to stop XC from actually having a turn of development, which passes initiative back to Fino. And if, the Doomsayer is dealt with, then there's at least a Twilight Drake left over. Okay. Starting off the turn, deal 5. Seems okay. Drawing a card's kind of weird, but Fino's already kind of behind in fatigue, so I don't think that's going to be too relevant at this point, drawing one extra card. It'll speed up the clock, but I feel like having access to more cards might be in his benefit at this point.
Fino could have developed a 12/12 this turn.
True. I believe we have seen the Soul Mirror.
I don't think it would have worked out, but it might have been the best line.
Perhaps he's trying to make several big waves here, this being one of them, following up with something like Deathwing Conj. Maybe he's trying to use Deathwing as a removal spell and then, or a removal minion and then Conj it after. The problem with that is it does require a specific board, obviously something that's less than totaling up to 12 attack.
There's so many power plays coming out from XC turn after turn, man. Fino might have to just rely on this box to get the job done. I don't think the cards that Fino has at hand will be able to counter XC's play. Murozond is just going to come out and be Fino's turn just better. There's a 4-mana Crocs in hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the first Murozond that's coming out. XC still has another one, and perhaps even more if more gets brought up from the hero power. I like this a lot from Fino, realizing that he's not going to be able to stick a full board, and removing this isn't really in his best interest, so he's just going face, and then either letting XC try to develop more back into it to the point where he can use Zephyrus to clear, or he can use Box to try and bail him out as well.
This definitely feels like a setup turn. Box is probably going to have to come down this game sooner rather than later.
Is this a lethal setup by any chance? There's 8 showing. Zeph can give Bloodlust for 9, 17, so not quite. And this plus Pyroblast doesn't quite add up either.
Can Fino safely get away with a Pyroblast next turn? If nothing else comes down. Does that just lose to Apotheosis?
it would be pretty poor against Apotheosis and against Kronks as well, I think. With only 8 cards left, but maybe Fino's at the point where he has to take that sort of risk.
Hacker, if there was ever a box turn. All right.
How long do you think he's going to wait before
be the one?
No? Does that change anything?
No.
I mean, stopping 8 damage, maybe.
Well, yeah.
There's a taunt in the way as well.
There's a Kronks in Xyz's hand that costs 4 mana.
Okay, but Fino doesn't know that. All right, box comes out. What's going to happen here? Serpent Shrine Portal. Dark Skies, not going to do too much. It would have been nice if that cleaned up the Netherwing, though. The multi-shot, okay.
Gets the Water Elemental.
Shadow Madness.
Execute on the 8/4. Nice.
Oh
Germination?
My goodness. With Taunt, Arcane Breath, and a Dragon in hand. Gets more burn.
That one's terrible. Now he's overloaded.
A little bit. Oh, he's favored to get a good buff here. Okay, how was that box?
I'd say it might not be enough to get Fino the win here, but that was more than good enough.
Yeah.
Or not more than good enough. It was a very good box. It might not be good enough, if that makes sense.
Right. Fair enough. Above average, let's say?
Above average.
Excellent. Okay, I mean, he dealt with a lot of Xyz's board there, developed some of his own board. Unfortunately, he did overload for 3, so Pyroblast can come down next turn. Zephyr's Bloodlust is a potential, so Xyz does need to keep that in mind. With only 2 cards left in Fino's deck, it's almost guaranteed for Fino to have Zephyrs on hand at this point, and Xyz knows that, so he's going to try to clean up some of this board and make sure that that's not a potential option.
Breath of the Infinite, Kronk's Dragonhoof could come down. Aeon Reaver also just clears up this board. That's way better than a Kronk's.
Xyz managed to handle everything Fino's pumped out at this point.
Fino only has 7 mana. Multiple minions die.
This is rough.
If an Arcane Missiles hits the 8/2, he can trade in, go Deathwing Dragonlord, and then just potentially Conjur's Calling and win the game.
I think that's what needs to happen. I think he needs to hit something like a Tyrion, perhaps, or maybe a Katrina Muerte can help Fino get some extra oomph out of this. I mean, conjuring an 8-drop is just good.
Xyz used so many resources last turn. He went from 2 Murazons to 0. He only has a Kronks remaining.
Yeah, if these are minions that have more than 5 health, we may see Xyz unable to deal with them. Oh my goodness.
Those are huge.
They are huge. Unfortunately, they don't set up lethal in any which way you...
That doesn't matter. They're big.
They are big, and that's important. And them having 4 attack is also really important as well. I don't think we've seen all the deaths in Xyz's deck yet. And even though we can see that he doesn't have any in hand, it makes it much more difficult for Priest to deal with these. So I just don't see how Xyz actually can get through these 2 dragons. Maybe over the course of a few turns?
Some of the best 8-drops that Fino could have possibly gotten.
Definitely. And I think that's what Fino was hoping to set up for in the end, realizing that the Deathwing needed to be paired with a Conjurer's Calling and saving it for so long. Instead of using it on a turn where he could have just spent 1 mana to remove a board, I think that's a really good recognition from Fino that he does need to manage his resources well in case there's good removal coming out from Xyz like we've seen so far this game. Tip the scales. 8 mana do nothing.
Yeah. I gotta say at the same time.
Great minds, you know?
Shoot.
All right. So how is Fino going to deal with this board now? He no longer has access to ping, so the second half of this Bone Wraith is actually kind of annoying.
Pyroblast Own Face does summon a 6/6.
It does, but 10 mana 6/6 feels a lot less powerful than spending 10 mana on other things as well.
Oh, if Fino Pyroblast his own face right now, I would not recommend that. I'm just pointing it out.
No. Pyroblasting your own face leads to early deaths for most Hearthstone notable characters.
Generally not correct to Pyroblast your own face.
Mm-hmm. Now, he could use Zephyrs here to try and simplify some of Xyz's board here, knowing that there's not that much left Xyz can do to deal with these dragons. But is there a way to use Zephyrs efficiently against Xyz's board here?
I do not like Zephyrus. I feel like a Rustied Raider plus an Escape Mana Saver is more than enough here. Fino's going to start summoning 6/6s, by the way. Going into fatigue, every single time that fatigue hits him, he's going to get a 6/6 from the self damage.
Yes, definitely. It won't be able to attack immediately because it will spawn at the start of his turn before it's able to attack. And I do also like bumping through this Bone Wraith. The attacks are ugly, but Fino does not have much left. He does need to start pushing the issue here, and even though it damages both his minions here, I think it was very important to start punching through and trying to get that last bit of face damage that he needs for this Pyroblast and Zephyrus to hopefully be able to close out the game.
Kronx is big.
Kronx is big.
Is Zephyrus bigger?
Kronx and Penance here will allow XC to clean up the entire board here. And at this point, I don't know if Zephyrus and Pyroblast are going to be enough. With the Apotheosis we see in XC's hand, I think we're going to need something crazy off of Reno. Inner Demon? Okay.
What Natalie Celine, kill the 6/6, deal 8 damage to face. You can set up lethal that way.
Oh my goodness.
That's one potential line. That's not the potential line.
Okay. Oh my good. Oh my. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Excellent work, Fino.
I mean, it's not there quite yet, but this is exactly what.
Wait, this is just Doomhammer. This is just Doomhammer. Doomhammer comes out.
Oh my god!
There's not a Doomhammer.
Oh,
why is there not a Doomhammer?
Doomhammer.
That deals
Zephyrus.
20 damage.
Zephyrus, you're drunk.
Oh no. Okay, if you have 8 attacks and you don't get a Doomhammer, Zephyrus needs a talking to. Zephyrus needs a talking to.
I brought this up earlier. After extensive testing between some of the players I've spoken to, notably Noblord, who has done a lot of Zephyrus testing on multiple board states, empty board states, mana cost, how much mana is left. Like, I've understood that in this current state of Hearthstone, Doomhammer is very, very rarely offered when there are other things on board. It has to be almost a clear board for Doomhammer to be offered. And I mean, this would still have been the perfect chance for a Doomhammer to come out, but unfortunately Fino was not offered it.
Do you think that if Fino had swung into the 8/8, would he have been offered the Doomhammer?
Potentially. I think,
and then just been able to deal 10 to the face.
I think that may have been a more likely scenario. But I'm also not sure. I don't think I've tested this scenario.
Is sick.
This is a
He
pretty
just
sick
gets
combo.
a 7/8.
And he gets the death off as well. Is there anything else that can come out from Reno here? Rising Winds?
This is a
not
crazy
quite.
game.
And he draws, which makes his fatigue counter escalate as well. This was so unfortunate for Fino. I'm not even sure. The Doomhammer definitely would have helped quite a bit. XC still had game against it, but I think he needed that off of Zephyrus. Or even perhaps a Natalie Celine might have helped a little bit. We can see the death in hand, but perhaps some other route.
The game would have
The Inner Demon
been entirely different if there had been a Doomhammer.
Oh, of course, there's no Acidic Swamp Ooze in IG's deck, and I don't believe there's a way to generate one randomly, at least very conveniently. There might be some weird, convoluted way over a couple of discovers into some other stuff, but this is... Oh my god, the Inner Demon was so big. Fino was so close to being able to capitalize off of it. I think with this fatigue tick that XC will take game 1 with Priest against Mage. This is, I mean, a lot of these matches have been very grueling and kind of taxing on both players, and it looks like Priest will get the job done. And we've seen XC sweep with Priest before. Do you think this is going to be the start of something like that?
That was just an insane game, Language Hacker. When you think about power turns from Priest, you think it might happen 1 or 2 games in a row. Same with Mage. That was like 8 turns in a row from both players were just power, power, power.
Yeah.
Double Murazon, triple Murazon. Amazing Reno from both players. That's not even what they ended up being their final hero. Galakrond was played.
The matchups get crazy, Gallon. I mean, this is definitely one of those matchups where it's all over the place.
Inner Demon and the Doomhammer wasn't offered. Kronx was played for 4 mana. That was a crazy game. Actually,
yes!
To take it at the very end, but that was just a whirlwind of a series. Or it felt like a series. It felt like we just played 5 games in one right there, but that was only game 1 of match number 2. We still have potentially 4 more in this match and potentially 5 more of the next one. If every game is like that, this day is going to be crazy.
Definitely, especially if XC is able to push this momentum and take this second set and take it to a third. We're going to have so much Hearthstone to talk about. And if every game is going to be as exciting and crazy as this one was, we're going to be floored, quite frankly.
It will be hard to keep up. I will say that if every single game is like that, I will lose my voice by the end of the day. But XC managed to, I think, pilot that pretty darn well. Same thing from Fino. A little bit unfortunate on the Doomhammer at the end there. Maybe there was a way to guarantee it. If he had hit the 6/6 first, I don't know. I'm no expert on that specific scenario, but I'm sure that, with testing, you'd be able to find out. But Priest is still up for XC. This is his pet deck. He managed to go 6-0 into the semifinals with this. What do you think the counter is going to be from T1?
So for T1, queuing up against Priest, let's see what they have left. So they still have Druid left. They still have Paladin, Shaman. I think they have their own mage as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are those 5 classes? 1, 2, 3, 4. Priest is gone. And Rogue, I believe, is the 5th one. I mean, I'd have to say Druid from T1. I think Board Control's kind of specialty Geppetto Malagos deck was, I believe, tailored to be able to counter Priests in this format where, like you said, Priest is the 5th deck, right? It looks like they have not gone with Druid. It looks like they've gone with Totem Shaman instead. Interesting.
Yeah. Totem Shaman.
I would have thought that the Druid would have come out. The Malagos being able to deal a lot, especially with the large boards from the Ysera Unleashed.
Totem Shaman does have a very favorable matchup versus Priest, though. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but again, I think anything they pick it's going to feel a little bit bad, just due to the nature of the fact that they're one down right now. Every deck that they have is going to have a counter queue, right? So
yep,
pick the highest win rate, hope you win the unfavorable, and go from there. I think is going to be the strategy. Win this game, win the next one, and then you're back in a good spot. This game is not going to be the question mark. The question mark is going to be the next one. Totem Shaman is very favored versus Priest. I think it's a very reasonable queue. If you had to choose one deck to beat Priest right now, Totem Shaman is probably it.
Definitely.
But on the other
I
hand,
think
if you go 1-1, then you're just still down 1. Instead of having 2 games to play, you only have 1 game to play.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to get at. If Druid may not be as favored against Priest as Totem Shaman is, but Druid has more sweep potential. Shaman can, like you said, easily get countered again. If it gets the win against Priest, IG can find something that counters again. When you're up 1-0 in a last tier standing best of 5, you're more than happy as the person in the front to kind of just go 1 for 1, because eventually you'll come out as 3-2. So I'm thinking maybe T1 should have been looking for something a bit more, something with a bit more sweep potential instead of trying to just take a win off the Priest.
Notice in the mulligans that Board Control kept both totems in the opener. In a lot of Shaman decks, like Evolved Shaman, there still is the totem package with the Totemic Reflection. But it's kind of more of the filler. And in a lot of matchups, it really does feel that way, even with Totem Shaman, where they just get run over. However, against Priest, this is actually a really good game plan. Priest just generally doesn't have good removal spells to deal with 0-2, 0-3 totems. They have to commit actual removal, Penance, Shadow Madness if another 1-drop comes down, Renew into something, into Forbidden Words, for example. So, very decent game plan against Priest that you don't normally see versus other decks.
Yep, definitely. And an interesting thing to note is that not in IG's Priest list, but in T1's Priest list, they do have tech cards that actually help against that matchup. They have stuff like Imprisoned Vilefiend and Shadow Menaces. And IG's Priest does not contain that. So I believe the Totem Shaman will be, well, I mean, we can see the game's not going to be that easy, but it'll be a little more likely to be unchecked against IG's Priest. Which is, like you said, why we see him keeping totems, because it's difficult for Priest to deal with them.
Right. Totemic Might comes down, or Totemic Power.
Totemic Surge.
Totemic Surge. There we go. 3rd time's the charm. Excuse me.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, not quite the card that XC is looking for, unless he thought steals another totem from Board Control's deck, which there's only one of at this point. I believe an evil totem. Oh, actually, they're Flame Tongues as well.
It's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, a dead card right now.
Yes.
From board control perspective, two options I think that stand out the most. You can either go Evil Totem or Coin Mana Tide. With Coin Mana Tide, you do draw through your deck, find a better chance at Totemic Reflection. But at the same time, Evil Totem now means you save the coin and can go something like Magic Carpet, Coin, Guardian Og Merchant the next turn.
I actually like this a lot. So the main concern from board control is if XC manages to stick an Apotheosis on this, even though the minion's not going to be that large, it's large enough to kill totems. And there is no easy answer for XC to deal with this the Magic Carpet. So even though the Magic Carpet doesn't threaten too much, and board control only has one mana minion in hand, I think this is board control's best chance to play a minion and have it stick past this turn.
For sure. He does lose a Lackey this way from the Evil Totem, but he protects the Evil Totem, which definitely seems like a more important part of that two-turn setup.
Definitely. It looks like he is valuing actually getting resources off of these totems, understanding that he doesn't have all of his payoff cards in hand. And on top of that, because of the fact that XC does have some tempo in this matchup, and it's not just one-sided with board control developing into the board.
One important thing in this matchup is that if it does get to the late game, Plague of Death kind of just single-handedly wins.
Oh, categorically. If 9 mana completely clear the board, Shaman it tends to struggle to make waves of boards. It wants to get ahead and take advantage of the fact that it's ahead. There are, in some instances, cases where the Shaman can make 2, maybe 3 boards, given enough time. But if the game gets to that point where a Plague of Death comes down, generally at that point the Shaman's already on their 3rd board, and then that getting wiped generally is lights out for the Shaman. So I like to pick up from XC, taking the Plague of Death, even though it is a little slow.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Board control has access to several options again. I think that this is going to be the turn that we see the Guardian Og Merchant Evil Totem come down. Wouldn't surprise me to see the Guardian Og Merchant hit the Evil Totem as well. The 3/1 Og Merchant with Rush would trade into the 2/3, and then the 2 other minions would trade over the 1/2. Protects the totem very well against the damage spells, Breath of the Infinite, Penance. And, actually only has 4 mana to work with, so there's really not much that actually clears off the totem.
Yep. Good spot. I like this a lot.
I mean, this goes back to what you're saying. Board Control's game plan was to protect that totem. That's why I didn't play it last turn and went Magic Carpet instead. That's exactly what's happening right now.
I mean, it is funny seeing a Divine Shielded 0-attack minion, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right that I'm right.
I agree with you agreeing with me.
Excellent. Master Spell, not something normally put on the decks, and that being generated from the Veil Weaver helps XC quite a lot here. Even if something like exactly a Totemic Reflection comes down on the Evil Totem, it will generate a larger board, but at least XC won't have to deal with a bunch of lackeys being generated from board control off of the Evil Totems.
For sure. You could play a Totemic Reflection now, but I'd be a little bit more interested in the Mana Tide. Witchy Lackey on the 0/1 makes it a random 3-drop. That's way more powerful. And yeah, I mean, Mana Tide is just not silenced. And when you Totemic Reflection and not silence Totem, you get more stuff. And more stuff is really good in this kind of matchup because that's what you need to win.
Definitely. In this matchup, if your initial push onto the board gets kind of denied, you need more stuff to win. And holding it is the way you get more stuff. If board control had something like a Bloodlust in hand, I could see maybe pushing for a wider board now to try and get the chip damage in to a point where Bloodlust can close up the game in 2 turns, but board control does not have that in hand right now. So I think he's going to focus more on getting a stronger board instead of guaranteeing a wider board. Oh, instead of guaranteeing a wider board, sorry.
Yep, love this play from board control.
The common's really good versus Priest. If you manage to get the 6/5.
Exactly. The first half of a Akama loses stealth when it attacks, but the Akama Prime has permanent stealth. It's, I believe, a 5-mana 6/5 that can just attack indefinitely. It ends up dying to stuff like Soul Mirror, but anyways, that's much later on in the game. We'll see if we get to that point. But it is it's an interesting thing that could change the way this match plays out if we get that far in the game. Not much dealt with here. Time Rip will get rid of that Mana Tide totem. So not too much of board control's board is being dealt with. That being said, he's not exactly pushing crazy amounts of damage. 6 is still pretty decent at this point, but without a finisher, board control needs to figure out if he values drawing more and wants to develop the Mana Tide again, or if he wants to save it potentially for next turn to use it with Totemic Reflection and get a double totem rolling out. And it looks like with the Overload, he doesn't want to do that because next turn he'll only have access to 5 mana now.
I imagine that means he's more interested in playing the Mana Tide this turn.
Yep. Same thing.
Finding
Similar
a
to what we've
Bloodlust
seen.
seems way better than just trying to dig through more of your deck, and the more cards you draw now, the more likely you find a Bloodlust for exactly next turn. Exactly next turn is probably what he's going for.
Ooh,
6
that
mana
could
is
pay
not
off.
enough for a Soul Mirror.
Correct. It's not
I
enough
mean,
for
look at
Plague of
X's
Death
hand.
either.
It kind of,
I mean, yeah, he's got a lot going on, but not for this board.
it's kind of trash. I don't really see any options that make a lot of sense. Cleric of Scales can't even find a spell here. There's no dragons
Yeah,
in
well,
hand.
Perhaps this Disciple of Galakron starting off might help him find something.
Well,
That
okay.
Actually, huh.
If you're
What do you think
playing a
about that?
minion, that's probably the minion that you want to play.
Okay. So the Infiltrator can kind of act like a pseudo AoE because 6 damage is still a lot for board control to push to have to put into it at this point. And if he does choose to trade off the smaller minions, they're going to die to the damage. So, and on top of that, the Death Rattle will also deal with something after. So it can add some interesting board tension, and we'll see how board control does respond to this Infiltrator off of the Disciple of Galakron.
Makes a lot of sense. Also, another thing to note is when does the Totemic Reflection come down? Board control can trade into this 2/6, but if he waits to see where it hits, there's a 1 in 7 chance that the totem dies. But if he copies it first, yeah, he gets a guaranteed totem at the end of it. But then it's twice as likely that that one of the important totems is going to die. So I think that is probably going to be the hardest part of this turn, is figuring out whether to go Totemic Reflection first or second.
The reason, so in my mind, I think the Reflection is better now, and board disagrees with me. Okay. The reason I wanted to do this is, yes, you're more likely to kill one of your remaining 2 Mana Tide totems, but by guaranteeing another one sticking next turn, it sets up for a very nice Splitting Axe as well next turn. And whereas if his Mana Tide got sniped here, the Splitting Axe next turn would have been much harder to actually take advantage of.
For sure. There's also like a weird thing where he could have tried to go for a slightly less guaranteed chance that the Mana Tide totem survives, and if it did die, then he'd have 5 mana to play the Evil Totem plus the Totemic Reflection. I may have liked that a bit more than just the hero power. Now, that being said, if the totem died, spell power could still be copied, and it would still set up for a very nice. Splitting Axe.
So XC's game plan here, I believe, is to make it to turn 9. If he can wipe out board control's board and then have access to mana after the following turn to kind of recheck or develop himself, I think is what he needs to get into this game and make sure board control can't steal a win with an early Bloodlust. Very powerful turn available here. If Boar wants to go super all in on totems, he can go Totemic Reflection on a Mana Tide again and Splitting Axe it after trading off the Magic Carpet if he wants to go full Mana Tide. I mean, they would be difficult to clear. Divine Shield, 4 attack totems.
This seems crazy. I like what you're saying. I like everything you're saying. I love it. It's great. Totemic Surge could even come down now as well. All right, if Totemic Surge comes down, how much damage is Bloodlust? Because I think that's the first thing that board control needs to ask himself.
If you can push through this taunt as well.
Right, because the spell power would kill the 4/5. He would have 7 in play, another 9 plus another 4. So you're looking at about 3 damage off lethal right now from board control's perspective. That's pretty crazy. That's really crazy. That's
Definitely. I think I actually really like this. Let me explain why. So Boar is making sure that there is absolutely no outs for XC, and by doing it in this way, he gives up an extra Mana Tide totem, but he doesn't need more card draw at this point. By doing this, it ensures that XC can't discover something like a Shadow Word Ruin to completely wipe out Board Control's board. That being said, even Mass Dispel won't do enough because he still has the Bloodlust. Even if his totems get reduced to 0 attack, it can still be buffed enough to do lethal damage. So I like this a lot from Board Control.
Yep, this is very smart. XC's going to go down to 13 life here. There's 11 in play. This is more than enough to win. Board Control doing an excellent impression of Quest Rogue as Shaman is going to take game number 2.
Well, he has to spot it first, but yes.
If there's anyone in the world that can count up numbers and do basic addition, I believe in Board Control.
He spotted it, and with the happy little smile there and a sigh of relief, T1's Board Control does manage to take the counter queue against Xy's Priest.
6-0 so far over the last 2 days. Language Hacker, 6-0.
At least 6-0.
Right.
I mean, wait another 20, 30 minutes. Maybe it'll be 7-0.
Maybe it'll be 8-0. I think that's the maximum he could possibly do.
If he wins that from here, probably, yeah.
Right. So 8-0 is the best he can do. Not that great, just casually going 100% over 8 games against some of the best Chinese players. Yeah, just another day in the office for Board Control.
Almost an Open Cup win. I mean, it's fine. People do that all the time. Now, that game was a lot... Go ahead.
Yeah, that being said, I think we're probably on the same page here. That was Shaman versus Priest, and Shaman versus Priest is not indicative of every single matchup Shaman has. That was a very favorable matchup, but they're polarized in some ways and polarized in others. And the next one I expect to be a very large and favorable for Shaman. The counter queue from IG will probably crush Shaman here, just based off of stats alone. Skill is definitely going to matter, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
No, I mean, like you said, Totem Shaman is a very polarizing deck, so I'm certain that IG has a couple of options in mind in terms of what they want to counter with. The games that Shaman wins in its favorables look so incredibly different than the games that they lose against unfavorables. It's very feast or famine when you're comparing the two. We've seen Totem Shaman been able to turn 5, 6, 7 crazy openings against decks like Druid, against decks like Priest. But when you put it up against something like even though it's banned out, maybe something like a Rogue. Actually, Rogue isn't banned. Rogue is a very good way to kind of dismantle the Shaman's early game. Mage is also a potential, although I don't think they'll be leading in that direction just yet. I think Rogue might be the first thing they'd like to counter queue with.
For sure.
From XC's perspective, from IG's perspective, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the Shaman game plan is pretty binary, I have to say. There's 2 ways the game goes. You stick a totem turn 2, and then you totemic reflection and you win, or your opponent kills your 0-2 by developing minions on play, and then they're ahead on board, and you're not, and then you have to stick another totem, and then it dies, and then you lose. Against Priest, their best minion is the 1-2 on turn 1. That's not going to kill a 0-2 totem. So you're going to win a lot of those games against something like Demon Hunter, against Rogue, against Warrior, for example. Their turn 1 is a 2-2, and then you lose a lot of games. It'll be interesting to see what IG uses to counter queue here. Rogue would not surprise me at all. Highlander Mage also doesn't really surprise me. They have a lot of effective tools in this matchup. Flame Ward, Reno the Relicologist, Zephyrus, for example. But I do think... And Doomsayer as well. I think it is going to come down a lot to that early game start from Sword.
Interestingly enough, the stats here still show Shaman as a little bit favored because if Mage doesn't have that early check, I mean, if you look at the Mage's deck list here, right, there's a few cards that cost 3 or less that might be able to help the Mage deal with the Shaman's early start. But if some of those checks aren't there, Totem Shaman can take the win, just like we've seen it take the win against Priest and Druid. So curious to see how the Mage is going to mulligan and what cards they're kind of going to favor holding on to. I imagine most of the cards will just be tossed back in favor of looking for stuff, like you said, a Flame Ward, perhaps an Ancient Mysteries, or even like an Imprisoned Observer. Yeah,
Totem Shaman absolutely mauls slow starts. Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, Puzzle Box, Deep Freeze, these are all awful. You could consider rolling Fireball because it clears off a lot. I would imagine IG Sword keeps it. But besides that, you need to find the early game. It even makes sense to throw away the rolling Fireball. Sure, it's a powerful mid-game play, but if you let them go Totemic Reflection on a totem turn 3, you're going to die.
Yep. You know what else comes down on turn 5? Bloodlust.
Exactly.
Rolling Fireball does not deal well with Bloodlust. Okay.
In fact, I don't think
control
those cards
keeping the
interact
evil
with each other
totem
at all. I've never seen a rolling Fireball kill a Bloodlust card.
You just need to play more Hearthstone.
I don't know how many games you need to see that. That might be a little bit too deep for me.
When you start having nightmares about Hearthstone or dreaming too much, you'll see a lot of cards interact with each other. Okay. I like this a lot from Sword. Can you explain why I like this a lot?
It's a minion, and minions beat 0-2s.
True. This is true.
You know what
Even
beats
using the
3-2s? 2-3s.
Accurate.
That
Board
pickup was
control
insane
is-
from board control. That was the best card in his deck.
Probably. I agree quite a bit. It lets him actually trade into the Acidic Swamp. It was Pagel making an appearance. Now, he's not a totem despite having 0 attack, but it still could be very useful for board control.
Right. I mean, just the value alone, that's a card that's never going to be answered. Sword cannot answer the 0-4. That if he tries to answer the Snap Pagel, he will lose. He's going to have to
about
hope
Arcane
that
Breath?
Pagel does nothing.
Arcane Breath into Arcane Breath?
Where's the dragon?
It's right on the top of the deck. You can't quite see it. There's a visual error.
Where's the
but,
second Arcane Breath?
From the first Arcane Breath.
All right, that sounds like really low odds of him clearing the Nat Pagel. It might be better to just ping off the 2-1.
Yeah, you know, that sounds pretty reasonable. Board Control taking his time there, deciding whether the 2 face damage is worth more than just trading into that Acidic Swamp Ooze, but in the end decides that it's probably worth trying to protect the Pagel because his hand is a little linear and perhaps finding a few more options or just guaranteeing extra card draws is probably what he wants to do.
Faceless Lackey has been on T1's side this entire series. The first Faceless Lackey of the day summoned the best 2-drop. This one is doing a darn close job of summoning another insane 2-drop for T1 here. Nat Pagel answers pretty much every single thing that Totem Shaman needs. Card draw, value, ways to play the game in the mid-game. Another card,
Yeah.
he's just 2 for 2.
Pagel is not dropping the ball. There's a lot of fishing going on today. I like that Sword held onto this Flame Ward. It doesn't really clean up much of the board now, and just because it costs 0 mana doesn't mean you want to jam it whenever. I think he's going to try to find a good place to set it up to try and hope that it clears enough of Board Control's board after he commits a bit more to it.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that Storm's Wrath is just nuts here.
While this is true, playing it specifically on this turn where Board Control could push a lot of damage with Bloodlust, I think is very,
3 for
very
3.
important.
And a Beaming Sidekick picked up. He can just do whatever he wants here.
Yes, Board Control has so many good options being offered to him, and Pagel, yes, Pagel's drawn a lot of cards, but Board Control making sure to keep it alive by killing off the Acidic Swamp was definitely is showing that he understands what's important in this matchup. He's setting himself up to succeed. He's giving himself the options that he needs. How much do you think we're going to see committed here with the Storm's Wrath, if the Storm's Wrath gets played at
I would
all?
love to see a Storm's Wrath come out first. I'd like to see a Storm's
Okay.
Wrath with 3-2 Ghost Base.
Makes
Or
sense to
saying
me.
that a 1-1 is better than a 0-3 Totem. I don't buy it, but that's okay. It does deal 2 extra damage, so maybe that changes the math a little bit. And you have a Beaming Sidekick to follow up to protect one of your Flame Tongues.
Yep, this way the Faceless Lackey dies to the Flame Ward, juggling the Flame Tongue Totem over, or whatever you want to call it, passing the buff from the Flame Tongue Totem over, allowing him to push 2 extra damage, and he follows it up at the end with a Beaming Sidekick on the Flame Tongue Totem.
Did he really miss any damage there? I don't think he did. He would just put the Flame Tongue on the far left of the Soaring Tempest. And then that would still do the same damage. I think that Board Control went for a 1-1 here instead of a 0-5. It seems pretty ugly. 0-5 is much better versus rolling Firewall.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It just seems
Yes, okay,
safer
I'm
overall.
following. Yeah.
I don't really like what Board Control did here. I don't think it's going to matter. Is Pagel going to go 4 for 4? The 1 in 16.
Oh my goodness. If Board doesn't craft a Golden Pagel after this game,
I mean, like, the fish are going extinct at this point, Language Hacker.
yeah, it may not even coincide with, Thrall's nature thing. Maybe he wants to keep the fish, but Pagel has a completely different idea. Okay. Board Control taking his time here, setting up more resources, understanding that the Evil Totem giving him more lackeys is more important than getting a second Flame Tongue. What does Sword need to do to get back in this game?
Frost Nova off Smalagos.
Excellent. Then what?
Blizzard off the top.
How about a Dragon Caster?
None of these work. Board Control is going to take game number 2. This was
Oh my
Mage's
goodness.
counter queue. This was IG's
I
counter
mean-
queue.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, Galen. I mean, Mage even did have some of the early tools. Sword did have access to Flame Ward, did have access to Arcane Breath. Shaman getting in there.
Pagel finally gives up. He's like, I've done my job. You don't need another card here. I think you figured out lethal. War Control will take game number 3. They are now up 2-1, beating the counter queue from IG. This was pretty unexpected, I have to say. You know, you generally don't expect Totem Shaman to win the second game that it plays in LHS.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this. It's a polarizing deck, and generally after it goes in and gets a win, it's quickly counter queued to make sure that it can't steal out any more games. And unfortunately, I just counter queue Mage, which I suppose they thought had a bit of a better chance than the other decks. I frankly didn't quite agree with, and maybe now because of their queue here, they're at even. Actually, hold on. They've lost their advantage and are now at a disadvantage in the set.
Right.
It's just, I don't know. I mean, I feel like something like a Druid probably would have. Oh, hold on. Not the Druid. Sorry, the Rogue probably would have been the right thing to queue up, and it may be what they end up queuing now to ensure that the Shaman can't shut out the series. But I mean, it's kind of unfortunate if they queue it after a loss when they could have queued it a bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, Rogue is always a deck that can sweep in LHS. You know, we always talk about these polarizing matchups and how they're good when you're ahead, bad when you're behind. One way to just get around this is by playing the strong decks against the field. Rogue is definitely one of them. And it's a very skill-based deck. You know, if you're good at Rogue, you're going to find a lot of value against weaker players. But that being said, that Shaman game just looked brutal. They did almost everything they possibly could to keep the Totem Shaman off board, coin the acidic Swamp Ooze, but then the Sludge Surfer comes down. Not only that, it comes down with one of the best 2-drops they could possibly get. And not only that, the 2-drops drew 4 cards. And they were good cards. You know, there was 2 Bloodlusts in there, and he didn't even need them.
Yeah, he just managed to get there with enough damage just from the minions generated. I mean, so the board control has been, I think, pretty close to, if not, you mentioned one slight thing you would have done differently, but otherwise, flawless play, even with getting good starts, with good payoff cards, he has been showing that he knows exactly what's important to be able to push through this Shaman. He's protecting in the first game, he was protecting his totems very well with the Guardian Emergence, and in the second game, we saw him and understand how important that Peggle was. Can
I ask why this
didn't come
down in game number 3? Why didn't the Temple Demon Hunter come down earlier? Why wasn't this?
So I actually completely overlooked Demon Hunter because I assumed it was banned.
Right.
Very big oversight on my part. But I think even a bigger oversight from IG's part because Demon Hunter just stomps Shaman.
Right.
It's an absolute stomp.
And then you have the counter queue, and you're at a favorable advantage. Why would you not take that matchup? I actually legitimately, I'm asking that rhetorically. I legitimately do not understand the game plan from IG's perspective here. Tempo Demon Hunter seems like obviously the queue, and it would take a lot to convince me otherwise.
Yep, cards like Twin Slice, even just the built-in hero power for Demon Hunter plus anything will kill a totem. So just any minion development from Demon Hunter or even just Umberwing, Twin Slice, I'm not sure if they're running I-Beams. They're not running I-Beams, but Chaos Strikes, they have so many early minions that contest the Shaman. You've mentioned that the Shaman preys on decks that have slow starts. Demon Hunter does not have slow starts.
No, not at all. I mean, look what's happening here. This is a pretty lackluster hand from Demon Hunter in my perspective, and it's still going to dominate. You go coin 2-3 into 2-3, and then you win. There's even a Spider Tank to follow it up. Obviously, it's a history buff. It's not a mech, so clearly much worse. But
right, but the stat line, we get what you're saying. Yeah, this is probably one of the slower starts that Demon Hunter can get, and it might not look that crazy. You're just, you're playing a 2-3 and then a 2-3. But against Shaman, that matters. That matters a lot.
Another Sludge Surfer comes down. Do you play it as board control?
I think he's considering playing the sidekick as a 1-2 and laughing that it's either the 1-2 or just play a 2-1 that dies to another hero power.
I actually kind of like the 1-2 because you could follow up with Sludge Slurper plus double Lackey the following turn. You'd have a 3-1 to contest. 3-1 Rush is really powerful against the Demon Hunter's game plan, I think, in the early turns.
I actually did like the sidekick there as well. It can contest the Umberwing pretty nicely, and if something like a 2-3 comes down, which I believe Board Control knows 4 2-3s are existing in IG's Demon Hunter list, can do something like a Sludge Slurper with the guaranteed Brush Lackey he already had in hand to clean that up. So I actually really would have liked the sidekick here. but it looks like he's trying to save it to buff a totem perhaps later on to make sure that it doesn't die to something.
For sure.
From IG's side.
I love the coin hero power from Sif here. That was really smart. Keeping Totem Shaman off the board is the way that you win. And, coin sure is a pretty important resource, but, when you can coin out a Moonfire, that's more than good enough to keep Totem Shaman off board.
Yep, definitely. Understanding the matchup, knowing that as long as Shaman can't stick anything on the board, their only real comeback mechanism is Magic Carpet, and Magic Carpet right now is still not going to do that much, and it can still be dealt with. It's early enough that it can get pushed off the board.
What is this hand?
It's a double time and double pay. That's what this hand is.
I think that board control is still in a really good spot here. Sidekick your sidekick. Goblin Lackey, the one that's big, and Storm's Wrath gives you a value trade on the 2/3, gets you a pretty large board against this 3/4. You still have 2 Goblin Lackeys for the follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, he was laughing at getting the Rush Lackeys earlier, but they can be useful. For certain, especially with you don't see Shaman having that many 1-drops at the start because they just don't have that many 1-drops in the deck. But this Lackey combo turn where he's going to play, we kind of imagine he's going to play 3 1-drops here with a Storm's Wrath. It's actually pretty powerful and not something that you see come out of Shaman too often, especially in a matchup that they tend to be behind in. But this is one of the ways that they can come back on board.
Saving a sidekick instead of a Goblin Lackey. How do you feel about that?
I feel like he's really valuing health in this matchup because of how easy it is for Demon Hunter to do increments of 1 or 2 damage, either with a hero power or with Twin Slice or with Chaos Strike. And I think Boar realizes that even though it will not impact the board immediately over the next turn or two, that a sidekick maybe on a totem later on might help it stick long enough, or perhaps he's hoping that Sif here tries to clean up the board, leave something up, and then he can take advantage of the sidekick again. I'm not sure. I do think the health is more important than the attack.
Makes some sense. Sif picks up another huge draw here with the Umberwing. Healing Totem is great, though. You now can get value trades if you want as board control.
Yep. And value trades is probably what he's looking for to help wrestle his way back into the board. Being able to take advantage of a wide board is kind of what Shaman wants to do. And even though board control is running low on cards, one way for him to be able to get back in this is making sure the Demon Hunter's board doesn't get large enough to overwhelm him, giving him time to find a Mana Tide, another Evil Totem into some Lackeys perhaps, or a Splitting Axe even.
Starting to look like the beginning of the end, though, for board control. A Gladebound Adept could come down, kill off this 1/6 with a couple trades on board. Sure, he's going to have board to be able to Bloodlust, kill off the History buff and the Gladebound, but then he's out of cards, out of stuff in play, and it's not even his turn.
I mean, board control kind of knows it. He's looking at the screen. You can see he's not super happy. He's shaking his head.
And I mean...
but that's...
This is great. This is great for IG, but why didn't it happen in game number 3 and not game number 4? Why was this not the counter queue?
It doesn't make sense. When you're behind, I think going for riskier strategy like that, queuing up a deck that you think has the chance to sweep and win unfavorables is more important. But IG was ahead. They didn't need to go for a sweep. They just needed to stay one step ahead of T1. And by choosing the mage, they were not able to stay one step ahead of T1. In fact, now they're one step behind, which is exactly what you don't want to be in last year's standing. That aside, Sif has been piloting this game well. He's kept board control off the board, giving him just as few outs, if in fact 0 outs perhaps, for him to come back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, the game's over. The game has been over for quite a while. Sif has done this marvelously. The coin hero power, I think, was the first really smart play, and since then he's just managed to lock it up as cleanly as possible. But man, this could have come out game 3. We're going to a game 5, and they are behind. Board control and T1 get a counter queue. Sure, board control finally loses a game, but it might be too little, too late.
I agree. We keep emphasizing this, but it's incredibly important, especially when we're already at the finals.
I mean, this is okay. This is not a random ladder game. This is, the potentially last series and potentially second to last game of the entire tournament. The champion is being decided after one or two more, two more matches, or half and one more match. And they choose to counter queue Shaman with, instead of a 75%er, they do it with a 45%er. They get the win. It's 2-2. That's probably what was going to happen in the first place. Both ways the score would look like it's 2-2 right now, but the difference is that they had to stay on the Tempo Demon Hunter, and T1 gets to choose which of the 4 decks remaining they want to queue into it. They are the ones with the options right now. They have the cards in hand, if you will, for collectible card game analogies. They're in a really good spot. I don't think that IG really needed to afford T1 that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. We've heard from some of the production who was more close with the Chinese players, and I believe they said that some of Team IG was a little stressed out over the course of the past couple of days, and we've seen a couple of missteps perhaps due to that stress. And this may also be a result of that, but I think this should be one of the things outside of the game where you can actually take a breath, kind of think with your teammates as well. I believe they are able to talk to each other during this repick phase. And I think this is definitely one of those cases where you should not be letting stress get to you. It's one thing when you're under the rope in game, and the clock's ticking and you need to figure out what to do. But I think outside of the game, they should have time to make these clear decisions of what they want to queue. They're up what favorables matter, what they need to do in the set, and I feel like that wasn't quite done.
Yeah, on the stress
going into game.
On the stress and nervousness side of things, I do think that the advantage lies firmly with T1. Not only out of this specific tournament, when you look at player accomplishments, 2 of the players on the T1 constructed team have made it to Worlds. Board Control hasn't, but if there was ever someone from EU that could, it would be him. And secondly, in this tournament, they are up a whole match. If they win this, it's over. If IG wins, there's still another best of 5 that has to be played. IG was down as well, so just like confidence, nervousness wise, I do think that the edge has to be given to T1 right now, and that might have affected the choice to queue up Mage instead of Demon Hunter. I know we're hammering it home, but these are the decisions that are making and breaking the winning strategies for these teams.
Definitely. It looks like Galakrond Priest is going to be the queue from T1 against Tempo Demon Hunter. The stats seem to be pretty even, but with the decks left over, a lot of the with the decks that have good spreads left, this possible sweeper decks, the matchups tend to be pretty even. So it does come down to gameplay. It comes down to how these players make the decisions against the opposing teams.
All right.
So we'll see how this lines up for T1 and IG.
Language Hacker, you are very experienced with Q Priest. We have talked about mulligans before pretty recently when I was casting with Lorinda, but what do you think are the important cards in a deck like Q Priest?
It depends on the matchup. So against something like Demon Hunter, which tends to be a bit more aggressive and they get on the board a lot faster, I think T1's going to be looking for the cards that they teched in specifically for this matchup. We're talking about Imprisoned Vilephiend. We're talking about Apotheosis. Okay, just paused in case you needed a second. Yes, these are the exact cards that T1's going to be looking for. Orange recognizes that he does want to keep Breath of the Infinite. One of the ways that Demon Hunter can spiral out of control are some early one-drops without the health buffs, and something like if I can just remember what they're called, the Satyr Overseers are things that can spiral out of control and cause Priest to lose the game if left unchecked. And T1 Orange has that check. He kept the Breath of the Infinite. Otherwise, he's looking for single target development or removal, like Imprisoned Vilephiend, that will let him answer a threat, Apotheosis, heal back up off of it, develop further with Fate Weaver. I think Orange has a great hand going into this matchup.
No one drop for IG. That's bad news, but there still is a potential X factor in this matchup. I don't know if you caught yesterday's games, but Orange was fatigued out of his mind, was making some questionable play. I don't think we've seen that from Orange today, but maybe fatigue could be a factor. That's really the one thing that I think we need to keep in the back of our minds right now. Orange is a stellar player, makes tons of great plays, but when he's under a lot of duress, very tired, that is when the mistakes start to come out. If that happens here, I would not be entirely surprised.
We'll see if Orange can keep his wits about him. The lists for this match were actually very interesting. We've talked a little bit about Orange's and NT1's Priest here, but IG's Demon Hunter also looks a little different. There are 2 copies of Cobalt Spellkin in the deck, a card that we don't see too often in Tempo Demon Hunter. The reason it's in the deck is because it gives you 2 1 mana cost spells into your hand.
Got it.
Randomly from your class. Nailed it. Perfect, first time. And the only 1 mana spells available to Demon Hunter are Twin Slice, very powerful, Consume Magic, conditional, situational, but still decent, can draw you a card, and Mana Burn, pretty decent in a tempo matchup, which I believe this is.
The one thing that I really like about IG's deck is that they do not include Warglaives of Azzinoth. I feel like that card is pretty terrible right now in Tempo Demon Hunter. So, I am not surprised to see it out of the list, but I really like that it's not in the list.
Yep, and it ends up being quite a bit slower than something that Demon Hunter needs in this matchup. In the past, it has been pretty good at 5 mana. Being able to equip it and deal with something like a Shield of Galakrond on curve is pretty good, but at 6 mana, it's just a little too slow. And it also adds to the fact that Demon Hunter may already want to be doing something like Skull of Gul'dan in turn 6, so it kind of further congests your board and makes it harder in some cases to use Outcasts effectively.
Orange has a very obvious turn here. I don't think that's without a doubt a very easy turn. But if he waits and debates what his plan is, I think that might get into Sif's head a little bit. You have time to think about the future turns. This is always going to be heal your own face pass. And that little delay might signal things that otherwise wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Orange could be feigning the fact that he has Renew here, and maybe he just wants to spend the mana now because he has a follow-up turn. He may have something like a Penance, and he's deciding, do I really want to Penance a 1/1? Now, we can see that that's not the case, but these are things that Sif might pick up on and try to, give him a false... Orange might be trying to give him a false sense of what he has available in his hand. Couple of options here from Sif. Obviously, the one that jumps out is Satyr Overseer, but it makes him quite vulnerable to something like a Breath of the Infinite.
I do not like Satyr Overseer.
Correct, I agree.
I imagine the play is going to be something like Bone Trooper Brawler, Guardian Og Merchant, your Bone Trooper Brawler.
Yep, this is one of the benefits of having this sort of Enrage package in Demon Hunter, which it didn't initially have. Being able to have minions that get enraged when damaged, but also giving them something like a Divine Shield. Protects very well against AoE, protects well against Imprisoned Vile Fiend. Looks like he's going to hold off on that and go with a History buff instead.
The reason I don't like this as much is because the Apotheosis can just come down and kind of ruin IG's day here.
It's a very, very clean, powerful Apotheosis if Orange decides to go for it. The Bone Trooper Brawler Guardian Og Merchant is weaker to something like a Breath of the Infinite. And I believe if Sif is hand tracking, knows that Orange kept a card in his opening hand, and cards you wouldn't normally keep by themselves as Priest is Apotheosis. So I think because he read that there's a card kept, it's unlikely to be Apotheosis. So he believes it's more likely that there's an AoE card in hand than there is something like an Apotheosis.
Still very interesting, though. I think this would have been a lot more interesting to talk about had Sif gone for the Bone Trooper Brawler Guardian Og Merchant line, because I'm not even sure if into that the Breath of the Infinite is the best play. Maybe Apotheosis on the 3/5 just loading up would still have been better, but we're not in that position anymore. I do definitely like this from Orange's perspective. Sif does have an opportunity to answer this multiple ways. Bone Trooper Brawler Guardian Og Merchant hero power, the Satyr Overseer hero power, both work, but I do think the position is much better for Orange than it could have possibly been.
Yep, I think that's fair to say. Orange in a pretty good spot, which we could kind of tell a little bit from the opening hand, and the fact that Sif did not manage to find a 1-drop. I believe this is the only way the Vile Fiend dies, so Sif kind of limited in his plays this turn, unless he decides to leave it up, which I don't think he wants.
Excuse me, I thought that there was 1 extra damage on this Imprisoned Vile Fiend, so I calculated stuff that the Guardian Og Merchant could have landed on the 2/3. That's my bad. That being said, Orange can now just develop a 3/6. I think that's the easiest play to make. I don't see a reason not to. You do give up Breath of the Infinite being golden, but does damaging your own minions really matter?
Not quite as much. It's generally used to clear the board, not to if you're using it to clear board, I think you're happy, even if it damages your own minion.
Right. Passing this turn
This is
doesn't
one of those-
seem right. 3-6 in play seems great.
This is one of those matchups where Fate Weaver holding versus playing is much more important, I think, and important to play it out because of the fact that you can't fall too far behind. It's a tempo matchup. Whereas we've seen in the past, players have been holding their Fate Weavers against something like Mage. I believe we saw that in the last set. IG decided to hold a Fate Weaver until it was invoked a bit more. But that was a different matchup. There's a clean kill on it, but
These turns are just getting harder and harder.
Yeah, this is where I think great players can kind of showcase that they understand how to navigate matchups. They know what Priest wants to do. They know how Priest generally plays in response to these types of boards. And we'll see players decide to play into or outside of, or into or not into specific removal spells that the Priest may have.
This is going to get checked by the Breath of the Infinite. I don't think there was a better line for Sif here. He had to hope that the Breath wasn't there, but it is. T1 does have the Breath of the Infinite. Orange is going to be able to clear off this board. He has follow-up as well. 30 health. It's going into turn 6. Sif is going to have to rely on the Skull of Gul'dan being amazing, but we haven't seen that yet. There's Galakron. There's Kronk's Dragonhoof for an 8-8 with Taunt. A Taunt can come down next turn. Renew in hand. I have to reiterate. He's at 30 life.
And it's game 5.
It's game 5.
And T1's up a set.
Right.
It's looking very grim for IG in this match. If there is a way out of this game, it's going to start off with that Skull. He may decide to delay it by one turn and get a Spellkin online.
I don't like that. I do think the Skull needs to come down as soon as possible. The outs that I see for Sif are Skull into another Skull. It's getting pretty dire, Language Hacker.
Altruist is still in the Demon Hunter list, so perhaps being able to have a big swing turn after this potential Skull into Skull is what Sif needs to get back into this game, and perhaps be able to deal with whatever Orange develops this coming turn.
I believe that Sif needs to play the control deck for quite a while here. He needs to have an Altruist swing turn and hope that that Orange does not have an answer to a full board of stuff. He's going to be spending time drawing cards. Hopefully there's going to be another Skull that he can get. There's another Skull.
Okay.
That's great.
Does he commit the Satyr this turn, having seen one AoE already? Do you think he needs it in play?
It's a bit interesting.
Does he even play the Battle Mage? Let's go back a step then.
I don't think the Battle Mage needs to come down. But if you're playing one, you should probably be playing both. I think it's a very interesting debate. Sif decides to play both. That does make sense. If you're going to commit all the way.
I think I do kind of like this. He does need stuff on board. Obviously, the Altruist out it would be exceptional, but I think having these on board means that it gives him an extra out. Forget Altruist. Like, Altruist aside, if Orange doesn't have another check here, this is also one way Sif can come back. Just having the minions on board, having the stuff ready to be able to deal with Orange, with what Orange wants to develop. Because if he passes this turn, Orange is free to develop a minion.
Yeah,
right now, Sif does not have a great way.
Right.
Exactly. Sif does not have a way to deal with that. Even though Orange might have an easy answer here, we can see a Time Rip. But like another AoE, for example, even Time Rip's not that clean. Sif will still have something left over. And even though it's not a lot, it's at least something where he can continue to develop past this.
Time Rip comes down.
Past this turn.
Mind Flayer Cars is a very impactful minion. I don't know how relevant it's going to be in this specific turn or the next couple turns, but it's one of the better ones. Sif can divert here if he wants to. Cobalt Spellkin could come down.
Right, the spells come down on the are gained on the right side of the hand.
Yep.
So Sif could develop the Spellkin and the Vile Fiend and get a hero power in, or develop the Spellkin and the Brawler set up for Skull next turn as well.
Yep. I do like the... I actually am not sure about which one should be developed, but either makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's an argument both way. With the Mana Burn pickup, he could have opted for Vile Fiend, Battle Fiend into Mana Burn, and then go Bone Chur Brawler Skull next turn. But I think knowing that Galakrond is only invoked once, that he's not super concerned about denying this turn. Perhaps he wants to give Orange a chance to invoke once more and then maybe deny it next turn if that's what he's looking to do.
How do you feel about something like Galakrond this turn to be able to set up for a Kronk's AoE next turn and just full clear the board no matter what?
I love it. I mean, if sidekicks were hanging around in Sif's hand earlier on, they would have been played. So all that's left from Orange's perspective is one discounted card from Skull, another card from Sif's deck, and then 2 1-mana spells. So I like this a lot. It's going to be very difficult for Sif to come back. He'll need something like a sidekick to get out of Kronk's range, and a third of the time that won't even work because the Spellkin will die.
Yeah, and even with a sidekick, like that's just still...
It's just not enough.
Right. Chaos Strike found. Glavebound Adept found. Okay, Glavebound Adept getting sidekicked changes things.
Yes. Having a 6-1 left over is quite... I mean, we can see that Orange has a death if he wants to use it that way, if he chooses to go for the Kronk's AoE.
Important thing to remember is that Mana Burn doesn't actually stop the Kronks either. Orange will have access to 6 mana. I think Sif has to go. Actually, I think Sif has to go for this Glavebound Adept line, right?
I don't think he can play too passive. You can, to some extent, play a little more controlly, like you said. Focus on stopping the priest from developing minions and then go for some bigger turns, like bigger swing turns where you develop a lot of stuff. But with the loss of Warglaives in this deck, it's a lot harder to do that.
There's a sidekick.
Also not... Okay. He doesn't have mana to play it with the...
Yes, he did!
Oh, he played the Mana Burn instead!
Was that a missed opportunity, Language Hacker?
I think it was, actually.
This could spell disaster for IG here. Kronks is easily the play. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Shadow Word Death could come down with Renew, but this Kronks looks so sweet.
Nothing is as clean as this Kronks.
It was not checked with the Beaming Sidekick when it could have been.
Goodness.
That would be another 6 damage. An Altruist off the top would have been crazy.
Let me back up a turn or two. So Kronks is obviously insane here. Clears the board. Very clear option from Orange. Very punishing for Sif. He did play into this because he kind of figures there's not much else that could be done, but I think he could have played Sidekick here to play around that. But back up 2 turns earlier, when we were talking about the potential Battle Fiend Mana Burn going into turn 7, looking back on that, the fact that Galakrond was actually decent on 7, do you think that Sif should have tried to set up that Mana Burn and the Battle Fiend instead of the Bone Shrew Brawler?
I'm not entirely sure. I do think that it has some merit, but remember that Orange could always divert, play a Shield of Galakrond, and set up for the following turn. Now we're getting into like pretty weird territory because, you know, a lot of cards would have been played differently. But yeah, I do think that there was some merit there. Like you're saying, denying the Galakrond into Kronks was a really good strategy. Now, again, there's not the guarantee that there's a Galakrond in hand, and if there's a Galakrond in hand, that there's also a Kronks as well, but I do think that Civ was afforded the opportunity multiple times to play around, which has happened. Civ needs a cycle. I don't know how else he's going to win this game. I guess he could try to rely on getting an Altruist off the top of his deck and then go from there. That might be his only way out.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Even with an...
It's too expensive.
Even with an Altruist draw, being at 4 mana, he has 5 1-mana cards in hand. Actually, no, it's not too... No, it is too expensive. Because he'd have to play both Twin Slices to be able to activate it. And at that point, the Kronks wouldn't die to the 5 slices, or whatever you call them, from the Altruist. Which means that Sif would have to like punch into it if he wants to. Which I think is what he's doing here by setting up the Berserker, but holding everything else to try and set up for that Altruist out.
Orange has a wealth of options here. They're all very powerful. Shield of Galakrond, Fate Weaver seems to me is the best. You can even have a 0-mana Renew. I don't think you would play the 0-mana Renew if given the opportunity, but...
I think Orange is going to think about the only way he loses this game.
Which
and I think
is Altruist plus...
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Altruist plus stuff. So he has to figure out how he can kind of take this turn. Exactly. Huge minion is the way to go.
Radiance.
I don't think he's looking for Plague of Death.
No.
Extra heal is not a bad idea. You're right. Yeah, Plague of Death is awful here. Psyche Split is an option. So it takes advantage of the fact that there's a full health Kronks on the board. He can still trade with that Kronks and have that play around Altruist because of how much health it has. And on top of that, there's another big minion as well.
Right.
It looks like he's going to deviate from that.
I believe that Orange has found a way to check this game. It's different than the lines that we've both been suggesting, but it seems like it gets the job done. Multiple things with 6 health. He clears off the 2-3, just playing super defensively. I think that's going to be his game plan for the next couple turns, just finding the easiest way to win this game. In his mind, it's play defense the entire time. Sif is out of stuff. Keep it that way.
The second Twin Slice pickup actually means that an Ultras...
Does clear.
Yes. So Sif still has an out here. There's a lot of damage being... like he's staring down, but Priest is not really known for its burst. And honestly, there's not that much removal left from Orange either. There's a Soul Mirror, so the Ultras could be checked. But the Ultras would end up doing a lot of damage in tandem with the Twin Slices.
Coltier and Chaplin plays around it.
It does?
Like, really well.
Quite, in many cases, yes. If he uses it on the Shield of Galakron, it takes Shield of Galakron outside of that Altruist range, but on top of that, it also plays around the Twin Slices being used with it, because if the shield lives as a 4-1 or a 4-2, whatever it is, the Twin Slice attack can't go phase. So even with Sif having like 8 or 9 damage banked up with his hero, won't be able to have it connect phase. So this Chaplain pickup was incredible from Orange, and also recognizing that it should go on the taunt here, not his stronger minion Kronks.
This is so smart. Setting up lethal in many ways. Radiance probably comes down because why not? It just sets up an even more guaranteed line. The 4-7 is always going to be in play at the end of this turn. Pain is not going to do anything. T1 is going to take the Gold Club World Cup as your constructed champions.
And quite an incredible performance from this team over the past 2 days, or the past 7 days. You know what? Not even just yesterday, not Joel's dominating performance today and yesterday, but T1 has been playing absolutely out of their minds over the past. They have not believe a single match over the course of the entire tournament. I believe they're 5 in sets, if not 6-0. It's just an incredible performance for them. They've been 6-0. Sorry, they've been playing out of their minds.
Yeah, I mean, they just every single matchup we see them time and time again, knowing exactly how to take it, the macro perspective, understanding what role they're playing every single turn. Board control. Yesterday, just put on a light show of a performance with Druid against matchups that were horribly unfavored for him. Today, Orange playing Rogue very well. Fino playing Mage and Priest very well. We didn't actually even get to see that much board control today because the other 2 people on T1 carried. But even board control had some amazing Hearthstone games with that insane Totem Shaman finish. That Peggle drawing 4 cards. Faceless Lackey was on the side of T1 today for sure, but the gameplay was there, man.
I mean, we've had a bunch of crazy games, and like you said, we've been able to see all aspects of the strengths. We've seen the macro game plan. We've seen small micro decisions like Orange piloting that Rogue. We've seen strategy as well, having these unique deck lists that they were able to use and queue accordingly based on what their opponent's deck lists were as well. And I think all of these factors led up to the fact that they haven't dropped a set. They've all been playing exceptionally. Board Control has had an incredible streak, but even when Board Control has taken the step back, Fino and Orange have also been playing incredibly well. They've all been specializing with the decks that they've brought as well, and seeing them on those decks has been really, really well, like incredible.
Yeah, I mean, their strategy for the pick and ban phase has been flawless. The decks they brought, in my mind, the only mistake that I can see them making all tournament was the fact that they brought Control Demon Hunter instead of Tempo Demon Hunter, and even that might not be a mistake, and I just might be plain old wrong on that. Every single game, tons of brilliant stuff going on. You know, Fino's understanding of the Mage and Priest matchups through to the late game is crazy. You know, even in the ones where it didn't pan out, the lines that he was trying to take were insane. If he had found a Doomhammer with that inner demon face, that would have been just like absolutely so cool to see, because, you know, it was the recognition of a huge turnaround of events with, you know, entirely changing your game plan within 10 seconds to try to find the winning line. Sure, it didn't pan out, but the fact that he like registered in his mind was very cool to see. I just think that the gameplay from every single player on T1 has been close to perfect. And that's props to IG as well. I think IG has played some really good Hearthstone. Sif especially really impressed me throughout this tournament. You know, the few times I've been critical of him, even looking back on them, when I got a chance to review it, it was like, hey, actually, I was wrong on this, and Sif did the right thing. So props to IG. Second place is not bad at all, but we have to talk about T1 here. Champions of the Gold Club World Cup, an absolutely incredible performance, Language Hacker.
Yeah, definitely. I've been impressed throughout the entire week watching these teams play. It's been nice seeing teams both from the Chinese scene and the international scene come together. But it looks like, despite China taking the Battlegrounds win with Team World Elite, the international scene with T1 was able to get the win here in the Gold Club World Cup constructed section. And honestly, I'm excited to see if more team stuff happens, and if, again, T1 continues to show dominance across all three of their players, maybe not even in team events, but in solo events as well. They've just been a pleasure to watch.
And I mean, this tournament kind of sets the stage for the next couple Masters Tours, I have to say as well. We get to see, I'd say, a couple up-and-coming Chinese players, also along with some very established Chinese players. We got a great chance to see their display of skill. Lots of great plays, specifically XC. His macro understanding, if he's not under pressure, I think is phenomenal. Along with that, we have a couple other names that stand out to me. Yu Ying, while maybe making some errors in terms of the macro game plan, his micro decisions overall have been really strong. And I think it'll be really interesting to see these players at Masters Tours in the future. Great tournament overall. Huge fan of of the games that we got to see today and throughout this week. I think that this format has been phenomenal, and I'd love to see it again.
Yep, the uniqueness of this format has been actually really, really cool to see. It's something completely different than we've been seeing in a lot of other tournaments, and especially Master Tours that we've been talking about. So it's good to see teams get a fresh perspective on that. With the Chinese teams having a bit more experience in last year's standing, it's still nice to see the international teams adapt to this as well. And this entire event has been kind of incredibly run. The Battlegrounds portion has been really cool as well, something we haven't seen too often competitively wise yet from Battlegrounds, and I think this sets the stage pretty nicely for that going into the future as well. With that being said, congrats again to T1 and congrats again to Team World Elite for winning Constructed and Battlegrounds respectively in the Gold Club World Cup. Thank you all for watching. This has been an incredible week, and I hope you guys have been enjoying it. Thanks to all the casters, production, and you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much. This has been great.